Hey guys, tonight we're headed to a hushed, gold-dimmed lobby in Buenos Aires, sometime in the mid-1960s, when elevator buttons clicked like typewriters and lobby clocks ticked just a little louder. The air smells faintly of brass polish, eucalyptus floor wax, and something floral, probably the bellhop's cologne. You're standing in front of 3 elevators, lined up like sleepy soldiers, all identical in shape, rounded tops. Honey-colored doors, but each with its own distinct hum, like distant tuning forks each tuned to a different type of dream. This story might spark your curiosity, or just put you gently to sleep. Either way, I'm glad you're here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The carpet beneath your feet is red, but faded, like it once had grander ambitions. It muffles your steps as you walk past the concierge desk, empty for now, and reach the narrow pane of wall where 3 identical brass plates gleam in the dim lobby light. Each one bears a single black number. 1, 2, 3. That's not the floor. That's the elevator. They were proud of these elevators. They gave them numbers, not letters, not names, numbers. You reach out, press the call button. It's convex, not concave, bulging slightly out like the belly of a well-fed cat, and the moment your fingertip makes contact, there's a tiny hiss, pneumatic, like a secret being kept. The light inside the button glows a pale orange, the color of marmalade under candlelight. No ding. These elevators don't ding. They whisper, or maybe groan gently, like a leather armchair that's just remembered it's meant to recline. Elevator number 1 arrives first. The doors part with a modest sigh. You step in. The floor is polished wood, parquet in a tight chevron pattern. A brass railing wraps around the back wall, purely decorative. The elevator's small, maybe big enough for 4 people if they don't know each other well. Above the buttons, a plaque reads, "Property of Grand Hotel Claridad, do not operate while in motion." Which makes you pause. Who would try to operate it while in motion? Is that something people tried? The plaque doesn't say. You reach for the control panel. Only 5 buttons, no L for lobby, just numbers, 0 to 4. The 0 is worn down, like it's been pressed more than the others. That's always how it goes. The floor that's closest to coffee always suffers most. You don't press anything, not yet. Instead, you look down to the far left corner, where a small metal clipboard is bolted to the wall. The paper inside is yellowed, slightly curled at the edges, and smells faintly of oil and pencil shavings. You tilt your head and read the top line. Lubrication log, lift 1, updated weekly. The handwriting is flawless, slanted script with swooping capitals. Each line carefully drawn. Wednesday, greased upper rail. Noted mild friction. Then, Wednesday, oiled governor pulley. Smell normal. Then, Wednesday, adjusted counterweight sway. Always Wednesday. Never Tuesday. Never Friday. Just Wednesday. As if the lift refused to be touched on any other day. The dates span back months. Years. 1 entry every Wednesday. Some in blue ink. Some in black. Occasionally, a green one slips in, like the technician was feeling cheeky, or ran out of pens. One time, someone underlined a whole entry, a rare act of emotional punctuation in an otherwise very neutral document. There's no signature, just initials, RL, MS, GJ, and once, cryptically, just, the tall one. No one disputes it. You step out again and move to elevator number 2. The button here is a little stickier. Not dirty, just reluctant. Like it wants to make sure you mean it. The light that comes on is a deeper orange. The elevator takes longer. It's sulking, perhaps. When it opens, the log inside is different. Older, maybe. The paper has a tear near the top and has been taped. Twice. 1 piece horizontal, 1 diagonal, like an X trying to hold it together. This one has entries in pencil. Faint, silvery pencil that catches the light like fish scales. Wednesday, oiled bottom guide rails. Elevator squeak persists. And underneath that, Wednesday, operator reported clunk between second and third floor. Then a gap. A blank line. Nothing written for the following week. Just a dark smudge, as if the pencil hovered there, then stopped. You don't know why, no one ever does, but that missing line draws your eye every time. You think about it long after you've moved on. Outside the elevator, a laminated placard reads, "All lift maintenance performed per Municipal Directive 14B, smoothness and silence." You appreciate that. Smoothness and silence. Sounds like an old jazz album. Back in the lobby, the third elevator is already waiting. No button press needed, just open, patiently, like a taxi with the meter already running. Inside, the clipboard has 2 pages. A full sheet, then a half sheet, clipped in like a shy edition. The top line on the half sheet reads, "Note: minor squeal during rainy season. Acceptable within parameters." Underlined twice. Rainy season. You look up at the ceiling. No music, just silence, and the faint buzz of an incandescent bulb behind frosted glass. These elevators don't rush. They don't complain. But every week, they are tended to, logged, documented, quietly loved, not by name, but by the rhythm of ink and the certainty of Wednesday. And as you step back onto the carpet, you start to hear it again. The softest creak, a hum underfoot, and the distant clatter of a pen being uncapped in a basement utility room. Because it's Wednesday. The basement of the Grand Hotel Claridad doesn't creak, it exhales. As you descend a narrow staircase lined with dust-gray tiles and a wooden rail that's been varnished so many times it feels soft. You feel the temperature drop by 2 degrees. Maybe 3, not cold, but settled, like this part of the building has made peace with the fact that it'll never see direct sunlight again. You reach the bottom and pause, letting your eyes adjust to the low glow of a single amber bulb. That's where you see it. The elevator maintenance room. It's not marked by a sign or a plate. Just a green door, faded, unlabeled, slightly ajar. The hinges let out the tiniest squeal when you nudge it open with your foot. You step into a space that smells deeply of graphite, oil, and the ghost of cigarettes extinguished decades ago. The walls are paneled in wood, warped in places by humidity, and lined with metal filing cabinets that seem heavier than they need to be. A desk sits dead center in the room, and upon it lies the crown jewel of this quiet underworld, the master lubrication ledger. It's massive, bound in brown leather that's cracked at the edges, with brass corner reinforcements that glint faintly in the amber light. You run your fingers across the cover. The gold-embossed title reads, "Cuidado de Ascensores, Registro Seminal." Weekly care of elevators, not repair, not inspection, care. You open it to the middle and find entries that stretch back to 1959. Each dated, initialed, and signed with almost monastic precision. You notice something right away. Each page is divided into 3 columns. Labeled, Lift I, Lift 2, and Lift 3. No nonsense, just the lifts, and what's been done to them. One entry reads, Lift I the 17th of June 1964 oiled pulley track. South-facing guide slightly stiff. Another, Lift 2 the 17th of June 1964 clean door track. Replaced ball bearing in left runner. And the best one yet. Lift 3 the 17th of June 1964 smooth hydraulic lever. Screech reduced. Lift responded favorably. Lift responded favorably, like the elevator has opinions. And honestly, it probably does. There's a procedural detail at the top of every page, a red ink stamp reading, "Do not perform lubrication while passengers are present, Code, Acto 5. Articulo 14b. And directly beneath it, in pencil, light and very deliberately not erased, is a note that simply reads, "Unless absolutely necessary." What constitutes absolutely necessary is never explained. One imagines it involves sparks. You thumb backward through the pages and see how the entries evolve. Earlier years used dip pens. The ink bleeds slightly through the paper, and there are a few smudged fingerprints, someone turning the page too quickly or scratching an eyebrow at the wrong moment. In 1960, someone switched to fountain pens. The writing becomes more fluid, even a little elegant. An initial appears repeatedly during that year, EP. They don't just log actions, they annotate them. Lift 2, the 3rd of August 1960, lubricated clutch. Friction resolved. Sound now, gentler than Monday rain. That's not technical language. That's poetry. EP must have loved this job. Or the elevator. Possibly both. You sit in the only chair in the room, which is squeaky but sturdy, and let the space settle around you. There's a small corkboard above the desk, filled with notes that only make partial sense. One is a scrap torn from a newspaper, tacked in place with a rusted thumbtack. Does elevator know? 2 haunt room 212? Claridad guest reports unexplained vibrations. You glance at the ledger. The week in question shows. Lift 2, slight rattle on upper glide. No cause found. Another note reads, in faded ink on a yellowing square of memo pad. Grease for pulley B changed to type M after honey incident. No further information is available. What honey incident? Why type M? Is type M a lubricant? A honey rating? No one says. No one ever says. Some quirks are like that. They get one line and a shrug, then become permanent. You stand and check the shelf beside the desk. A row of small tins sits on a narrow plank, each with a label written in pencil and covered in old plastic tape. Chain oil, July. Rail smooth, low use. Glide wax, only for 3. Apparently, lift 3 is picky. You pick up one of the tins, and as you shake it gently, something rattles inside. Not liquid, not powder. Probably a small tool, or a forgotten mint. Either way, you don't open it. That feels like breaking some kind of code. The room has one other feature, a small hatch in the floor. Bolted, locked, not recently used, no label, but beside it is a loop of rope. Frayed, unattached to anything. This is the part of the manual that never got written down. You look back at the master ledger, still open on the desk, and realize the top of the page is labeled with a faint watermark. Model 3 PISTON Western HYDROTYPE. Installed 1954, factory default limit 23 floors. The Claridad Hotel only has 5 floors. That's overkill, or preparation, or someone planning for a tower that never happened. There's no mention of that decision in the log. Just the entries, just the Wednesdays, the careful, loving ritual of opening the canisters, checking the bolts, pressing a thumb to the metal edge of the runner to feel for heat or drag. No devices, just instincts, and the occasional humming. Back upstairs, someone presses the call button again. But down here, you hear the faint scrape of a pencil. Someone's still writing. Maybe it's EP, maybe it's the tall one, or maybe it's just the room itself, jotting down your presence. After all, this is a place that remembers. The elevator in question, lift 2, the one with opinions and potential hauntings, stands just beyond the maintenance room. Its shaft wrapped in cool concrete and nostalgia. You don't go into the elevator yet. You wait, because you've been told, whether by habit or rumor or the manual itself, that this one likes a moment. So you stand facing the closed brass doors, brushed clean but clearly aged. They don't gleam so much as quietly agree with the light. There's a soft fan hum behind them, and if you're patient, you can hear the pulleys shift, slowly, rhythmically, like a cat settling into a warm spot on a pillow. You gently run a finger over the call button. It's convex, worn smooth, and reads LL in a small serif font. Not lobby, not lower level, just LL, like it doesn't want to explain itself. A procedural detail. Buenos Aires elevator regulations circa 1963 required weekly verification of cable tension. But only on Tuesdays. The reason? Mondays were too unreliable, engineers might still be hungover, and the oil too viscous from weekend idleness. Tuesdays, it was believed, offered optimum steadiness. The entry in the Claridad's secondary log, yes. There's a secondary log, for Tuesday, the 4th of September 1963 reads, cable tension nominal, slack test within expected margin. Lift 2 glides well today. There's no standard for glides well, but it was accepted as valid input for over a decade. You push the button lightly. It doesn't light up. It clicks. Not loudly, just once, like a polite throat clear. And then, after a long enough pause to make you question it, The doors open. Slowly. Left first. Then right. That's lift II's habit. The interior is narrower than modern elevators. And taller. The ceiling has a decorative brass grille, which serves no purpose other than to whisper secrets from the 1950s. The floor is inlaid with faded mosaic tile in a floral pattern, worn down in the center from decades of shoes, trunks, and quiet moments of hesitation. The control panel is a vertical brass plate, with rounded rectangular buttons and etched numbers from S to 5. S stands for subsuelo, or basement. No B, just S, because everything here prefers implication over explanation. As you step in, the floor gives just a bit under your weight, not a shift, but a greeting. You press 3 and wait. The doors close again. Right first, then left. Another lift 2 signature move. This elevator is not rushed. It doesn't hum show tunes. It doesn't jolt like modern ones. It rises slowly, with the air of someone remembering each floor like old lovers. Midway up, you hear it, a faint chime. Not from the control panel, but from somewhere above you. An old bell, maybe? Or something dropped on the upper guide rail that rolls slightly every time the pulley pulls tight. You don't know. No one does. The official manual never mentions it. But the tall engineer with the stiff collar once said, "It's the bell that tells you the lift still likes you." You reach the 3rd floor and step out onto faded red carpet. The hallway smells of dust, perfume, and faint mildew, not unpleasant, but like a novel that's been closed for decades. The light fixtures are milk glass globes mounted in bronze rings, glowing just bright enough to read a name on a door. You turn back to look at the elevator. The doors have already closed. Lift 2 prefers not to linger. Here's a quirk that isn't listed anywhere. Room 312 has no doorbell. All the others do. Just a small brass plaque where the button should be. Blank. Some guests have noted this with curiosity. Others don't even notice. But the Claridad's 1965 maintenance memo includes a brief and cryptic line. Room 312 doorbell retired for electrical symmetry. All is balanced. Balanced how? With what? Nobody knows. Or rather, those who did are no longer answering questions. As you walk toward the stairwell, just to see what lift 3 looks like, you pass a cleaning cart. Not modern plastic. Wood, with iron wheels and canvas compartments. There's a jar of oil on it. Not for cleaning. Labeled in ink. Hinge Med No. 5S blend. This isn't elevator oil. This is for doors. But it smells the same, rich. Metallic. With a hint of camphor. Back on the stairwell, you spot another ledger. A smaller one. Leather spine. Cloth cover. Tucked into a wall alcove with a small brass plate. Daily use, lifts only. You flip it open. A different hand. Blockier print. Lift I, the 6th of May 1961. Slight stall at floor 2. Resolved by reset. Sound. 2 clunks. 1 sigh. That's not a diagnostic. That's an impression. But it's written with full authority. Signed off. And archived. You love it. You descend to the 2nd floor and find lift the 3rd's shaft door. This one's painted, a soft teal, with peeling edges and a larger call button. Not LL, but a circle with a dot in the middle. According to a note in the large log. Dot means the lift prefers precision. Who decided this? It doesn't say, but it's believed. You lean your ear to the metal and listen. Silence. Then, slowly, you hear lift 3 shifting above. Not descending, just adjusting its weight. The manual calls this rebalancing. Especially common after consecutive solo rides. Apparently, it keeps the cable tension even. Or that's the excuse. Another unresolved mystery. The emergency stop switch in lift the 3rd's panel is labeled repose. That's not standard. Not in Spanish. Not in English. Not even in French. And yet there it is. In caps. Gently faded. You don't press it. You just make a mental note. All these choices, every smell, every label, every button press, stack like old receipts in a drawer. Maybe meaningless, maybe priceless, but certainly held onto with purpose. You head back down the stairs, passing a sign that reads, "Do not run while in motion." It's unclear whether it refers to the elevator or the guests. Either way, it feels fair. You reach the lobby again. Lift 2 waits, unmoved, silent, but you could swear the doors twitch a little when you pass. Like they recognize you. Now that you've had your first proper encounter with lift 2, you're curious about what lies behind the scenes. So you trace the tile path past the lobby desk, unmanned at this hour, and push gently on a narrow green door marked Servicio. It resists for a moment, then gives way with a sound that is exactly halfway between a sigh and a creak. Welcome to the service corridor. The lighting shifts instantly. Gone is the golden glow of chandeliers and glass-shaded sconces. Here, the bulbs are bare, cool, humming gently as they halo patches of beige wall tile and cast long shadows under the pipes overhead. The corridor is narrow, but not claustrophobic. It's just efficient, utilitarian, the hallway equivalent of a man who always carries exact change. You follow the signs, Montecargas, Sala de Controles, and finally, Lubrication, to a door with a brass knob that's too cold for comfort. Inside is a low-ceilinged room, perhaps 4 meters square. This is where the work gets recorded. Not done, recorded. On the back wall hangs a chalkboard divided into grids, each column headed by a single initial, I2, 3, IV, and occasionally V. There was a lift V briefly. It's a story for later. Below each column are rows of dates and cryptic entries. 3W, OK. 1.5C, no drift. Gummed, belt said, tisk. And most importantly, the oil logs. Stacked neatly in shallow cubbyholes are the old leather-bound volumes. Each logbook has a cover color, navy, forest green, dusty mauve. You pull the one for lift 2, green, of course, and set it on the metal worktable. Beside a tin cup filled with stubby pencils, the cover crackles when you open it, and a fine layer of graphite dust wafts up. Procedural detail. According to Buenos Aires Hotel Maintenance Standard Form 28B, revised in 1962. Elevator lubrication must occur no fewer than every 42 operating hours, with exceptions granted only for holidays and official labor stoppages. There is a diagram in the appendix, 2 pages long, showing approved oil points, guide rail base, counterweight pulleys, upper tension loop, door clutch, and emergency braking pad. The diagram is labeled not with numbers, but with illustrations of birds. Yes, birds. Page 14 of the log begins with flamingo point, sticky, applied 3 milliliters of Z-grade. Hair and arm squeaked. Reset with cloth strip. You gently run your finger down the page, finding ink from different decades. Some dark, bold, assertive, others faint, scribbled, or done in red as if to scold. One entry stands out. December 14, 1966. Lift 2 whispering again. Same corner. No mechanical defect found. Applied ritual drop anyway. Ritual drop. You love that. You find the oil drawer, yes, drawer, and open it to reveal a lineup of small glass bottles. No labels, just symbols etched into the sides, a triangle, a double wave, a single dot, a tulip. You lift the tulip bottle and uncap it. It smells faintly of eucalyptus and old metal. The combination hits your senses like a memory that doesn't belong to you. Quirk. In the 1960s, several Buenos Aires hotels believed in aromatized oiling, not for guests, but for staff. It was said to improve morale and encourage attentive lubrication. Lift the Third's oil was once infused with anise. Lift IV's, cinnamon. Lift 2, eucalyptus and beeswax blend, for clarity. According to a side note in one engineer's handwriting, on the wall beside the chalkboard is a laminated page. Unlaminated. Originally. Someone clearly did it later with a home kit. Judging by the slight bubble in the top right corner, it reads, oiling sequence for calm travel. 1. Whisper once. 2. Wipe contact points. 3. Apply half drop to fingertip. 4. Trace groove. 5. Wait, then wipe again. Optional. Nod, asterisk. No signature, no logo, just the instructions, but the logbook references it often. With quiet reverence, performed calm travel sequence. Lift 2 settled soon after. You glance around the room again. A single wire stool in the corner. A mug ring on the workbench. And a dangling light bulb with a pull chain made of tiny brass beads. You give it a tug. The bulb sways gently, casting a looping shadow across the floor like a question mark. You hear a creak in the hallway. Possibly lift 3 adjusting its posture. Possibly someone remembering they forgot a mop. Either way, you close the log gently and place it back in its cubby. You wipe the graphite dust from your fingers on a cloth that's seen decades of similar gestures. There's something comforting in the record keeping. The way the old ink preserves not just information, but character. One entry in a particularly elegant hand reads, "Tuesday's oil behaved politely. A fine day." And another, scribbled sideways in the margin, simply says, "Don't trust the dot bottle." No one replaced the bottle. They just stopped using it. You spot it now, in the back corner of the drawer, dustier than the others. Untouched. Unresolved note. Somewhere in these logs is an entry that's been smeared. Not crossed out, smeared. Like someone brushed it deliberately while the ink was wet. The word beneath seems to begin with R, maybe reversed. Or remembered. Or resigned. You lean closer, but can't tell, so you close the drawer. And as you step back into the corridor, the tile under your foot shifts just slightly, not enough to trip. Just enough to acknowledge your presence. These floors, like the lifts, seem to know who's paying attention. You make your way back to the lobby, passing a mop bucket that smells faintly of pine and grease. And for a moment you imagine the mop has a name. Probably does. Everything here does. You glance at lift 2 again as you pass. Still waiting, still sure of itself. You don't press the button. Not this time. Instead, you sit down in the nearby chair with cracked red vinyl and a single loose armrest. And open a different logbook. Lift eyes. Let's see what stories it tells. The logbook for Lift I is the thickest of them all. Its brown leather cover is worn down to a softness that feels almost intentional. Like the hide has memorized every pair of hands that's ever flipped it open. The corners are rounded, not by design, but by decades of gentle wear. You let your fingertips settle into the spine's indentations before opening it, as though requesting permission. Inside, ink. So much ink. Entries in cursive, block letters, looping flourishes, ink that feathers, ink that smudges, ink that has faded to a kind of noble whisper. Lift I was the first. The prototype. The hotel's oldest companion. And the log treats it like an elder, not just with maintenance notes, but something that borders on reverence. You begin on page 1. Installed, March 3, 1959. Model, Otis Buenos Aires Variant 4E. Single cage, oak inlay. Procedural detail. The Variant 4E required manual lubrication of the safety cam and slow speed buffer every 10 days. Regardless of passenger load, it also included a wooden guide rail sleeve, which was a controversial design choice even at the time. Maintenance staff had to sand it gently with beeswax-saturated cloth before applying oil. Too much pressure could cause drift, too little. A squeal. You flip forward a few pages. Mid-May entries. Cam squealed today. Juan blamed the humidity. Left rail running warm. Realigned with prayer and elbow grease. Passenger whistled softly. Lift hummed back. Coincidence? Quirk. Lift I had a habit, apparently, of stopping a few centimeters above the ground floor, requiring passengers to step down with mild ceremony. This became known among staff as the bow. A corrective gear was ordered in '62 but never installed. Some said it was better that way. You find an entire 2-page spread where someone had written, in alternating red and blue ink, a poem to lift I. You hold us, even when we forget, to hold ourselves. There's a sketch below it, a crude drawing of the elevator doors with rays radiating outward. As if wholly. Unresolved note. One log entry. Dated October 1965. Simply reads, Lift I stopped between floors for 73 seconds. No one inside. No record of call button pressed. Doors opened softly. That's all. You keep turning pages. Every 10th page or so. A small oil blot interrupts the margin, accidental, but regular. Like punctuation in a language only a few people still speak. Some pages are stuck together at the corners, possibly from water damage or spilled coffee. But you separate them gently. Beneath one fold, someone wrote, If you can read this, you care enough. Lift I's shaft, you've heard, is partially visible from the stairwell landing on the 3rd floor. A small, vertical slit between iron bars offers a peek at the cage when it glides past. People have reportedly waved at it. It's unclear if it ever waved back. The log includes a maintenance side note from 1964. Guests report mild vertigo between second and third. Diagnosis: normal. Treatment: keep calm and ride lower. And a few lines later: lift I prefers mornings. You're not sure how that was determined. But it's underlined twice. There's a diagram taped to one page. Hand-drawn and gently yellowed. A lubrication map for lift I with labels written in 3 languages: Spanish, English, and what appears to be Portuguese, though the spellings are inconsistent. One of the points is labeled sonido quieto, or quiet sound. The area is marked with a star and the note. Only oil with bottle marked 8-spoked asterisk. Others are too loud. You flip to a more recent page, 1969. Entries get sparser now, shorter, a little more clinical. Lubricated guide, no new noise. Lift slow but cooperative. Applied quieto bottle. Noticed purr. But even these brief notes carry affection. It's clear that lift I isn't just a machine, it's a mood. You stand up and walk past the actual shaft. Listening. At this hour, it's still. No hum, no purr, no motion, but you can almost imagine it shifting in its cradle. Like an old cat stirring in its sleep. Back in the corridor, you find a faint oil trail, just a dotted line of slightly darker tile leading from the shaft room toward the workshop. Someone must have carried a leaking bottle, or maybe set down an oiled cloth too carelessly. You follow it instinctively. It ends at a wooden shelf holding a single oil can. This one's different, taller, with a curved neck and an ornate handle shaped like a question mark. Someone has tied a piece of gold thread around the spout. No note, no label, just that thread. You pick it up. It's light, possibly empty, possibly sacred. There's a small folded paper beneath the can, wedged between the shelf slats. You unfold it, for when it sings too softly. Use sparingly. You smile, fold it back, and leave everything exactly as you found it. By now, the sun outside has shifted. Light filters through the high windows of the service corridor, casting warm stripes across the wall. It's morning. Even the logs seem to know it. As you close the lift I book and return it to its cubby, you find yourself tracing the edge of its spine with one fingertip. A small gesture of thanks. Because now you know, lift I didn't just carry people. It carried stories, rituals, days that blurred together, smoothed out by oil and care and a certain hush that only old machines can teach you to notice. And as you turn to face the next lift's logbook, you realize you're beginning to understand the whole system, one hum at a time. The logbook for Lift 2 is leaner, both in thickness and personality. It's housed in a gray binder, the kind that tries very hard not to be noticed. The spine has a faded label that simply reads, 2, as though that should be enough. No name, no flourish, just the Roman numeral, scratched into a strip of masking tape that's begun to curl at the corners. You open it. The first thing you notice is the handwriting. Every entry is in the same meticulous, all caps print, black pen, no cross-outs, no doodles, no jokes. Whoever kept this log treated it like a ledger. Not a diary. Efficient, focused, maybe a little afraid of getting it wrong. Procedural detail. Lift 2 was a side-load model with dual-stage pulleys, meaning its lubrication schedule differed slightly from Lift I every 7th day. The pulley spindle required a thin coat of molybdenum grease, applied with a long-handled brush. It's explicitly stated in a typed insert, never apply by hand. The brush, which still hangs on the wall nearby, has a handle shaped like a small paddle and bristles that smell faintly of machine oil and citrus. The first page of the log reads, activated, the 12th of June 1961. Hotel Wing B Manual 4D Rev. There's a tiny oil stain at the margin. The first and last irregularity you'll find for several pages. You skim through routine notes. 07.13, squeak detected. Shaft 2, Sector B. 07.14, realigned cable. Silence restored. 07.21, lubricant applied per schema 2C. It's clinical, but after a while, you start to spot the cracks. One entry, dated December 12, 1962. Lift stalled for 11 seconds on descent. Control room indicator remained steady. User reported, strange air pressure in ears. No error detected. Greased lower guide wheel regardless. There's no editorializing, no speculation, but you can feel the curiosity behind the words. It's as if the technician wanted to ask, why did that happen, but couldn't bring himself to do more than observe. Quirk. Lift II's call buttons once featured an unusual labeling system, up and down arrows replaced with the words, rise, and lower. It wasn't until someone from a foreign embassy reportedly asked, do you mean ascend, that the manufacturer agreed to replace them? Even so, locals remembered the old wording fondly. A sticker beneath the new down button reads faintly, in pencil, still says lower in my head. By now, you're halfway through the binder. Somewhere in 1963, the all-caps technician began leaving brief, cryptic postscripts. Everything greased. No echo today. Lift moved before I pressed call. Passenger claims he heard a hello inside. Advised rest. And, your favorite, nothing broken, just off. We'll listen again tomorrow. Unresolved note, the Lift 2 manual refers, twice, to something called the window zone, a 30 cm section of the shaft where echoes distort slightly and oil tends to degrade faster. No one ever explains why. But someone has underlined the phrase in red and added a note, replace cap gasket if whistling persists. You check the diagram a few pages later, sure enough. A tiny circle marks the window zone. It's located just between floors 2 and 3. You make a mental note to listen next time you ride. You turn the page and find an entry that breaks pattern. 09.18, found small feather inside maintenance hatch. No entry point visible. No birds on site. Left it in place. That's all. No analysis. No action. Just left it. The next entry resumes normal tone. You flip further. By mid-1964, a second handwriting style begins to appear, rounder, messier, lowercase, a new tech, perhaps less intimidated by the binder's history. Lubed rails. Ran it twice. Better now. Someone whistled. Got a whistle back. There's a little drawing on the bottom corner of one page. A smiley face with a gear for a nose. Someone's loosening up. Still, the rituals remain. You find a carefully preserved maintenance checklist titled, Preliminary Grease Path for Cold Weather Weeks. Step 3 reads, warm oil with breath before application. Avoid open flame. Learned that one the hard way. You don't ask. Across the hall from Lift II's shaft, there's a metal panel, dull. Brushed aluminum, probably installed in the 70s. It hums slightly, not loud, just a soft vibration, like someone thinking behind a closed door. There's a sticker on it, old and curling, that reads, if it sings, you're late. You stand quietly for a moment, listening. The elevator is idle, but the shaft breathes. Every so often, there's a faint tick, like cooling metal or a forgotten switch toggling itself. You place your hand on the wall and imagine what this lift has carried, people in suits. In bathrobes, in love, in arguments, people pressing, rise, and lower, without ever wondering who oiled the gears underneath. You return the binder, carefully closing the cover. It's not as warm as Lift II's logbook, but it holds something else, restraint, discipline, maybe even respect. It did the job, and it did it well. As you prepare to move on to Lift 3, you take a final glance at Lift II's control panel. There's a tiny chip on the edge of the 2 button. You press it gently, and just for a second, you think you hear a reply. Lift 3 is in the east wing, which is really more of an architectural shrug than a distinct direction. The corridor narrows here, ceilings are slightly lower, and the wallpaper has a faint floral pattern that feels like someone tried to be cheerful but gave up midway through. You step past a forgotten houseplant, alive only in theory, and spot the door. Lift 3 isn't hidden, but it is quiet. Too quiet, maybe. No hum, no familiar buzz, just a subtle presence, like someone politely waiting to speak. The call buttons are oval, not round, a 1965 retrofit. According to the sticker above them, Civic Standard Upgrade, Type F buttons, Buenos Aires Transit Commission. Type Fs were infamous for sticking on humid days. A procedural detail from the logbook nearby confirms it. June 18, button, up, Requires fingernail press in rainy conditions. Recommend patience. You press it with the appropriate reverence. A slow amber glow answers. Inside, the walls are veneered in dark wood that looks better in dim light. The floor has one of those checkerboard rubber mats that never sits quite flat. One corner is always curled, and no one dares cut it. Superstition, probably. The logbook, tucked behind a maintenance panel, is thicker than the others. The paper is lined but slightly slanted, as if the printer gave up on precision. Entries span a decade, each one written in the same looping. Flamboyant hand. Someone, somewhere, enjoyed this job. The first page begins. If you are reading this, the lift still runs. Beneath that, a sketch of a dove. No explanation. You turn the page. Entry after entry documents lift the third's life in what could almost be called verse. April 9th, she groaned at floor 5 again. Ached like a dowager's knee. Applied the balm. The balm in question? A specific blend of graphite oil applied to the counterweight pulley. Noted 2 lines down in more conventional terms. April 9th, graphite blend. 0.45 milliliters. Applied to pulley housing via swab cloth. Lift now descends smoothly, if still a bit whiny. You chuckle. Whoever wrote this knew their audience, future techs, insomniacs, and perhaps 1 or 2 bored hotel staff with too much curiosity. Obscure quirk. Lift 3 features a maintenance hatch with 2 latches. Not one. An anomaly traced back to a parts shortage in 1967. The hotel ordered hatches from 2 different suppliers, both delivered. Both installed. Rather than return either, the technician on duty combined them. Since then, the dual latch hatch has confused dozens. The manual simply reads, hatch, engage both levers. Do not favor one. Unresolved note. One entry from 1972 reads only. She stopped for no one. Midnight. Full moon. No guests logged. That's it. No action. No correction. No follow-up. You tilt your head, wondering. Below that, someone added in smaller letters. Could be the music again. This prompts you to investigate the lift's internal speaker. Yes. There it is, tucked into the upper corner. Slightly recessed. At one time, it must have played hold music. But the wires are dusty. Likely disconnected. Still, the writer continues to reference music. September 18th, lubricated guide rails. Sounded like tango after. Could be ghosts. Or just the oil. You begin to notice a rhythm to their reports. A blend of mechanical precision and emotional metaphor. Each entry describes not just the what but the how it felt. The log treats lift 3 like a living creature. December 5th, slow to rise. She hesitates, as though reluctant. Bearings checked. No obstruction. Could be emotional fatigue. Gave her time. You close your eyes for a second. Imagining it. An elevator with moods. Maybe it's silly, but something about it fits. A procedural note taped into the binder with yellowing scotch tape confirms one more technical truth. Lift 3 used a sidewall lubrication slot. Only accessible via removable brass panel. Brass was chosen not for performance, but because steel made her complain. Direct quote. There's an ink-smudged page toward the middle that simply says, important, do not insult her. I once cursed out loud during oiling and she dropped 6 inches with a shudder. Never again. You'd dismiss it as whimsy. But a technician from 2 years later writes, didn't believe him. I said she was fussy. Lights flickered. Now I believe him. You laugh quietly. Ghosts or not. There's a whole mood board happening here. Quirk. At some point, someone affixed a mirror in the corner of lift 3. Not a safety mirror. A vanity mirror. Oval. Brass-rimmed. Still spotless. No one owns up to it in the logs. One note simply reads, she likes to be seen. Let her sparkle. The final page in the book is dated 1976. It reads, greased the rails. Checked the hatch. No problems. She sighed and rose smooth as cream. That's enough for today. There's a faint imprint of a lipstick kiss in the corner. You close the binder, almost reluctantly. Outside, the hallway remains empty. The hotel feels quieter here. Less traveled. You turn back to lift 3 and press the button again. The amber light flickers, then holds. You step inside and place a hand on the wood panel. It's warm. You say nothing. She hums once, gently, and then she lifts. The next lift on your lubrication log tour isn't technically in the guest area. In fact, it's not technically on any map. You were told about it by someone at the front desk who leaned in conspiratorially and whispered. If you really want to see something odd, try the service shaft near the linen chute. The log's in a teapot. You thank them, because of course you did. You find it after a few turns, past the laundry room where a single iron hisses in the distance. Then behind a faded green door marked, Staff Only, Empleados Solamente. The latch is loose. The air smells like starch, old uniforms, and that faint industrial tang of soap flakes. The elevator is narrow, boxy, more like a wardrobe than a lift. It doesn't hum, it wheezes. Its outer gate is a folding scissor-style grate, painted once in teal but now mostly rust. It closes with a sound like metal sighing. No floor indicators, no backlit buttons, just two ceramic toggles, up and down, with handwritten labels in Spanish and what might be Dutch or something older. The up label is half peeled and reveals a second, earlier label beneath. It simply reads, Inside the lift. It's dim. One light bulb hangs from a wire, flickering. There's a low shelf in one corner, barely wide enough for a clipboard, but resting on that shelf, surrounded by a doily. Yes, a doily is a ceramic teapot, chipped at the handle. Inside the teapot is the lubrication log. You lift it out carefully. The pages are soft from handling, stitched together with thick green thread. The handwriting varies wildly, block letters, cursive loops, even a few pages in pencil. The first entry is dated 1961. Service lift B. Added 3 drops to chain roller. Used olive oil again. Don't tell Marta. And there she is. Marta. Her name pops up repeatedly. Marta says the lift prefers olive to paraffin. I think she's right. February 9th, Marta's birthday. She says the lift feels younger today. Added 5 drops to celebrate. It becomes clear that Marta wasn't just the staff supervisor, she was the emotional translator for this peculiar piece of machinery. Procedural note from the back cover. Written in blue crayon, yes. Crayon. Always oil between towel changes. Not before. Otherwise the lift smells like starch all day. Apparently, scent matters. You sniff the air cautiously. Sure enough, lavender. Faint but there. One page is completely devoted to an argument about viscosity. I say 10W30 is too heavy. Marta insists it soothes the motor. We agreed on rotation. Paraffin 1 week. Olive the next. Chart inside linen cupboard. You imagine the meetings. Another page is dog-eared and titled, Emergency Lubrication Instructions. It contains exactly 1 line. If Marta isn't here, do nothing. A quirk you can't ignore. Someone, at some point, decorated the interior paneling with pressed flowers. Ferns, mostly, laminated behind what looks like clear resin. They're brittle now, yellowed and curled at the edges. But still beautiful. You run your finger lightly across one. And it doesn't flake. A smaller entry from 1970 reads, Replaced pulley gear. Sprinkled rosemary. Just because. You smile. The more you read, the more the log becomes less of a maintenance record and more of a journal. Marta disappears somewhere around 1975. The entry says, Marta left today. Lift was still. Didn't move at all. We oiled the cables anyway. Just in case she's listening. No one ever removes her name from the log's notes. Even decades later, she's referred to. Marta's rule #3, never lubricate on Thursdays. Not sure why. Still doing it. The most charming of these quirks? A recurring phrase written on the top of several pages like a chapter heading. Respect the vertical. It's not explained, but you get it. Eventually, you come across a list written entirely in rhyme. Oil the chain. Avoid the rain. Don't rush the gears. Be kind to ears. If things go wrong, sing this song. It stops there. You wonder if Marta ever actually sang it. Unresolved mystery. There's a small metal box bolted to the lift ceiling. Clearly meant to house something important. But when you pry it open, it contains only a folded napkin and a paperclip in the shape of a fish. No note, no log entry, just that. You replace everything carefully, setting the log back into the teapot. Outside, the hallway still smells like detergent. But the lift hums now. Softly, like it knows you were paying attention. You ride it once, down. Then up. It moves with a kind of gentle patience. Like an old dog still willing to fetch the paper. But only if you ask nicely. At the top floor, someone's left a tiny ceramic cup on the floor near the lift. No saucer. Just the cup. It's empty but warm. You leave it where it is. Feels like part of the ritual. The light above you steadies, no more flicker. You step back out and close the gate gently behind you. Respect the vertical. Back in the main hotel corridors. You feel a little disoriented. The service shaft had that dreamlike quality. Like stumbling into someone else's memory, or maybe a forgotten opera scene about love. Oil. And linen rotation. But now you're heading toward the North Tower. And the lighting shifts. Less warmth. More formality. A bit of marble in the walls. A brass sheen to the stair rails. You're not in the fun part of the hotel anymore. You're in the part where businessmen kept their shoes polished and carried pocket diaries with quotes about discipline. You find the elevator tucked into a modest alcove between two conference rooms. Each named after rivers you're pretty sure don't flow anywhere near Buenos Aires. The lift door is surprisingly ornate, burled walnut inlay, with a small etching of an owl in the top right corner. Why an owl? No idea. The log won't help you. But you open the small utility cabinet beside it, expecting a clipboard. Instead, you find a folder, leather-bound, sealed with a button and loop. It smells like beeswax and ink. The front is embossed. Registro de Lubrication, Torre Norte. Inside, the log is sectioned by date. And by who was on shift. Each shift has a code, A1, B2, C3, and someone's drawn tiny caricatures next to some entries. You flip to a midwinter page from 1964 and find this. A1 checked bearings. Applied 3 milliliters of SE42. No squeak. Pedro says it sounds less judgmental now. There's that word again, judgmental. These elevators have personalities, apparently. A procedural detail. This log uses exact milliliter measurements. Always. They even specify temperature-adjusted oil levels. With conversion charts for humid days. You didn't know oiling a lift could require so much math. One margin note, dated 1967, reads, Formula revised per Maintenance Bulletin number 11. Use 2.75 milliliters in humid months unless unit hums upon start. If humming persists, pause. It's thinking. The phrase, it's thinking, is underlined 3 times. In pencil. You run your hand over the paper. It's thick. Almost too elegant for elevator talk. Then you spot a strange entry near the end of one section. Entry deleted by request of management. See envelope. There is, indeed, an envelope glued to the back flap. You open it. Inside is nothing. Just a faint scent of cinnamon and one faintly greasy fingerprint. You stand there for a while, wondering how a folder can feel like it's judging you. Back to the log. Another page is headed. Notes for future attendants. And beneath. Do not lubricate during storms. Speak kindly to the motor before restart. If you hear music, do not whistle along. Always end with one clockwise motion. Never counter. It's not signed, but the writing is confident. A quirk you notice. Someone has added a symbol to many entries, a tiny triangle drawn beside certain dates. Always the same orientation, not explained. You begin to suspect it's code. Maybe for, this was a bad day, or, avoid repeating this combo of oil and timing belt tension. You follow the triangle trail until it stops suddenly in 1968. There's a blank section, no entries for a week. Then, this. Returned after 7 days. Belt slightly misaligned. Floor 3 smells of oranges. Possible correlation. You will think about that sentence for longer than necessary. Near the end of the folder is a fold-out sheet titled, Acceptable Lubrication Zones, Diagram A. It shows the elevator guts as a series of numbered boxes. Nothing particularly strange, until you see box 7. Box 7 is labeled, Do not oil, ever, trust us. No elaboration. There's a line drawn through box 7 anyway. In red pen. Next to it, a scribble. Sorry. A final note tucked into a side sleeve reads, If elevator hums a waltz rhythm, check pulley 2B. If it hums tango, you're fine. Let it dance. You close the folder gently. The elevator next to you creaks. Doors still shut. You look at the owl etched above the panel and wonder, does it remember the triangle entries? Does it forgive box 7? Unresolved note. There's a spot on the brass wall panel beside the floor buttons that seems smoother than the rest, almost polished. No instructions ever mention it, but you've now seen similar spots in at least 3 other elevators. Thumb-sized, thumb-shaped, thumb height. It's as if generations of elevator operators reached for reassurance before pressing the button. You try it. It's cool to the touch. Reassuring. You place the folder back in its cabinet, close the door, and step away. This one doesn't need your help. It's well loved, well logged, a bit judgy, sure, but only because it's read more poetry than you have. You head west now, past the grand ballroom and into a quieter wing of the hotel, one that's more residential. If that term can even be used for a place where the wallpaper smells faintly like pipe smoke and the floor creaks in a language older than Spanish. This is where long-term guests once lived, where the elevators got a little more familiar. The next log you find is hidden behind a carved wooden panel with a sliding latch. No label, just instinct. You open it like a secret door and reveal a slim booklet bound with cloth tape. Its corners curled like buttered toast. No title, but the first page reads, Elevator D, Servicio Silencioso. You know you've struck gold. The first entry, from 1962, is written in tiny, upright script. 8 a.m., lubricated main spindle. Used 0.5 milliliters less than standard, feels right. Sound, soft exhale. Notes. Elevator greeted me with a sigh. Might be tired. You love that. Might be tired. A procedural detail. This log includes not only lubrication records but emotional observations of the elevator's mood. Each line ends with a tone descriptor, flat, melancholy, decidedly proud. There's even a shorthand key. F equals fussy, G equals grateful, T equals temperamental, NQ equals not quite. The notes are inconsistent, of course, but they feel oddly truthful. One entry includes this. Oil, 3 milliliters, slightly warm. Belt, stable. Tone, NQ, possibly had argument with basement dumbwaiter. That's a sentence to frame. Then, a shift. In 1965, the handwriting changes, sloppier, more rushed, but still deeply affectionate. One line reads, Reapplied sealant to guide rail after lunch. Elevator refused to close doors until I said, please. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe they're unionizing. You can tell this operator liked to joke. But also, to listen. A quirk appears halfway through that year. Someone starts sketching in the margins. Tiny faces. Some look human. Some don't. One resembles the owl from the North Tower. Another looks like a melted gear with eyes. No explanation. Just doodles. By 1967, you see a new heading added. Whispers noted. This section logs sounds heard during routine lubrication. Not mechanical sounds, no screeches or clicks, but auditory oddities. Low hum, 3 pulses, similar to cello. Heard name, Elena, very faintly. No one around. Soft knocking from shaft wall. Repeated, not echo. You're starting to think this elevator may be haunted, but in a courteous way. There's one hauntingly poetic entry near the bottom of the page. Applied oil too quickly today. Felt guilty. Elevator descended in silence. No chime. It ends with a sad little face drawn in blue ink. Just 2 dots and a crescent. It's more expressive than it should be. You flip forward. Here comes the procedural gem for this wing. Lubrication here follows the 2-zone pulse method. That means each shaft receives oil in 2 stages. 10 minutes apart. One application for the tension gear. One for the glide track. The manual insists this pause gives the spirit of the elevator time to settle. Yes, it says spirit in the 1960s, in a government-issued document. You pause to appreciate the optimism of that sentence. A page near the end is stained, dark blotches that look like soy sauce but smell like rust. The note, still legible, reads, accidentally double-oiled. Response. Floor 4 skipped entirely. Not technical, intuitive. Elevator knows. You believe it. There's a lingering smell here. Something between brass polish and cinnamon. You're not sure if it's real or just memory rising from the page. Either way, you keep flipping. You find a 2-page spread labeled Recurring Issues, Not Mechanical. And underneath, door opens 1 inch when wind blows west. Shaft hums on Wednesdays, never Tuesdays. Mirror in car always reflects 2 more people than present. Requests to visit non-existent floor, M, increasing. 1 line, in red ink. We do not acknowledge floor M. You don't know if that's a guideline or a warning. By now, the entries grow sparse. The last regular note is dated 1971. Elevator refused to ascend past floor 5. We had a long talk. Then it changed its mind. No chime, no explanation. And then, just a single sentence. I think it's lonely. That's the end of the log. You close the book gently. Run a thumb over the cover. Someone's name is embossed faintly on the spine, C. Mendoza. Unresolved note. You find the name, C. Mendoza, scribbled in tiny print on the wall of the shaft. Barely visible through the maintenance slit. Below it, a single tally mark. Maybe they counted how many times they comforted the elevator. Maybe that was just the first. The walls around you feel quieter now, like they're listening. You return the log to its hidden nook. Close the panel, and step back into the hallway. Outside, a small, round button glows softly beside the elevator. You don't press it. Not yet. This one deserves a moment. Eventually, you press the button. It's the quietest chime you've ever heard. Not a ding, more like a distant teacup being set gently on its saucer 2 floors away. The doors open slowly, no rush, like they're waking from a nap and would rather not be bothered. You step inside the car of elevator D. The lighting inside is warm. Not fluorescent, more like the glow of a late afternoon sun trapped in amber. The walls are paneled with narrow slats of varnished wood, darkened at the corners where decades of hands have leaned, braced, waited. There's a faint vertical mirror on the back wall, warped slightly, like it prefers remembering rather than reflecting. The panel has only 5 buttons, though you're currently on floor 1. That math doesn't add up. The button for floor 3 is rubbed nearly blank. The one for 4 looks newer, shiny brass. Replaced. The 5 flickers when you look straight at it, but not in your peripheral vision. You don't press anything. Not yet. There's a small framed notice below the panel. Handwritten, in black fountain pen. If car fails to respond, speak gently. Elevator D does not like abrupt instructions. Procedural detail. The maintenance manual, housed in the records office, states that elevator D's lubrication was always applied using a feathered applicator. Not a dropper or nozzle. The feather is not decorative. It's required. Specifically, a goose feather. This was meant to reduce static shocks near the pulley belt. But several entries describe the feather being soothing or ceremonial. One note even says, oil, 4 milliliters, feather dipped twice. Car made sound like a yawn. As you lean gently on the handrail, you feel something carved beneath the wood. You slide your hand along it and find small initials, M plus RP. 1966, and then the word, pause. Not stop, just pause. The elevator hums once. The floor trembles lightly, not in a mechanical way, but like someone shifting in their sleep. A quirk emerges. There's a faint, circular shadow on the ceiling, nowhere near the lights or fixtures. It looks like a stain. Except, it shifts slightly. Always just to the side of where you're looking. No one ever mentions it in the logs. That might be because there's a superstition that if you write about it. It gets darker. You blink, and the car begins to rise. No movement, no sound, just a subtle change in pressure. Like the air deciding it prefers altitude. You pass a narrow slit of light. Then another, maybe floor 2? The buttons don't light up. The panel hums gently, in harmony with the motion. Then, something odd, the car stops. But not at a floor. The doors don't open. The lights remain steady. You wait. 10 seconds. 15. And then, softly, you hear music. A tune, not piped in through a speaker, but echoing faintly from behind the panel. It's an old milonga, something your grandfather might have tapped his foot to in an overgrown garden. It plays for exactly 24 seconds. Then silence. And then the elevator resumes its rise. An unresolved note. Some operators reported this pause, exactly between floors 2 and 3, as the listening point. The manual refers to it only once. In an appendix, some units may exhibit pause behavior near midpoint. Do not interrupt. Unit may be assessing. Assessing what? No answer given. You arrive at floor 3 with no fanfare. The doors open halfway, then stop, then open the rest of the way. Out here, the hallway is different, broader, quieter. The carpet is deeper, a soft burgundy with gold flecks that form an accidental constellation. You step out, and the elevator waits, as if reluctant to let you go. At the far end of the hall, a large framed chart hangs crookedly. You straighten it. It's a lubrication calendar for Elevator D covering every month from 1962 to 1973. Instead of checkboxes, it uses inked thumbprints. Each thumbprint is slightly different in shape, but all belong to just 3 people: Mendoza, Roque, and someone identified only as L. The color of the ink changes year by year: black, indigo, red, and once, oddly, a smear of metallic silver. In the bottom corner, a faint pencil note reads, "Do not miss November. Elevator remembers." You're not sure what it remembers, but you're guessing it isn't Halloween. There's a side panel labeled Secondary Application Chamber. Behind it, a series of copper tubes leads to what looks like a miniature reservoir, complete with a valve labeled Trickle Feed Only, max 1 milliliter per week. Procedural detail. During Argentina's 1968 transition to centralized elevator maintenance oversight, a short-lived bylaw required hotels with elevators over 10 years old to retrofit a secondary drip system, fed by capillary action and monitored by what was basically a modified egg timer. The system never caught on, but Elevator D has one. The egg timer's still here. 2, mounted in a brass cage with a soft red ribbon tied around its top. The sand inside is blue. You turn it once, just to feel the mechanism. No sand moves. It's jammed, but you swear the elevator hums softly in response. Like it noticed. You sit for a moment on a bench nearby. The cushion faded into a gentle blur of shapes, swirls and knots, and perhaps a stylized letter, E. A mirror across the hallway reflects the elevator doors. Now closed, now still. The hallway smells faintly of waxed linoleum and mint. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the gentle machinery of the moment hold you in place. Somewhere, another chime sounds. Someone else is riding. You decide to stay on floor 3 a little longer. Not because there's something specific to find, but because the air feels different here, cooler, slower, like time has a few extra seconds per minute. The kind of floor where people linger without meaning to. Ahead, down a hallway that bends gently left, you spot a maintenance door slightly ajar. You push it open, quietly, and step inside. It's not a closet, exactly, more like a narrow archival room. On one wall, a tall shelving unit holds dozens of slim binders, all hand-labeled with date ranges and machine IDs. You trace a finger across a row: Lift D, July to December 1964. Lift D, January to June 1965, and so on. You pull one free at random and open to the middle. The handwriting is crisp, thin, done with an ink pen. Not ballpoint. There's a grid, date, time, technician initials, lubrication amount, viscosity rating, and remarks. Most remarks are simple, standard routine. Slight squeak south rail, or temp above normal, reduced by 0.5 milliliters. But on one page, there's a note that stands out. Entry 7C, feather tip frayed. Applied oil anyway. Elevator slower, but smoother. Consider intentional? A procedural detail worth noting: during 1966-67, hotels in Buenos Aires began following the Uniform Lubrication Protocol, which specified a precise 4.2 milliliters of oil per main rail, not to exceed once every 11 days. Feather applicators were mandated due to electrostatic risk. Many maintenance logs include little feather stamps to mark compliance. Someone took this very seriously. In the back of the binder, there's a tiny envelope. Inside, a folded square of tissue paper. And inside that, a clipped feather. Pale gray, probably goose, frayed at the end, just like the log said. Who preserved this? And why? No name, just a small handwritten line. For reference, in case it forgets. As if the elevator might be the one losing track. You put the feather back. On a lower shelf, stacked almost casually, are the oil tins themselves. Tiny rectangular containers with labels half worn. Some still smell faintly sharp and metallic. One can is dated 1963 and has a small chip in the rim. Someone wrote, in firm block letters, for Thursdays only. No explanation. That can rests beside another labeled, ceremonial use, backup only. You step back out into the hallway and close the door softly. Further down, past a cracked sconce and a dusty display case full of unused guest umbrellas. You find a side stairwell. It spirals tightly, clearly not built for guests. A faded sign reads, staff access only, elevator technicians welcome. You take the stairs down, counting steps as you go. 41 total, one creaking louder than the others, step 17. Slightly lower than the rest. You arrive in a sub-level hallway. Not basement dark, just hushed. The air smells of iron and polish. This corridor runs behind the elevator shafts. You can hear the occasional groan of a pulley. The soft churn of the counterweights rising and falling. It's not loud, more like a heartbeat. Steady, alive. Halfway down the corridor, there's a window. Not to the outside, to the inside. A narrow, rectangular viewing panel into elevator D's shaft. Just enough to see the side of the car when it passes. You wait. It doesn't come. But there's a clipboard hanging beside the window. A laminated page. The title reads, Interim Calibration Log, Emotional Tuning, Experimental. And under that, Date Technician Observation. April 4th, 1966, L. Cabin responded favorably to lullaby. April 11th, 1966, L. Hummed. Soft light flicker. April 18th, 1966, L. Silence. Weight felt heavier today. You're not sure what kind of log this is. But it's clearly real. You rest your palm against the cool wall beside the window. No vibration, just stillness. Then, a shadow passes. You don't see the car directly. Just the suggestion of motion. The ripple of something descending. You check the clipboard again. Someone has recently added a new note in pencil. Still responds to touch. April 1970. The pencil is still tucked into the clip. You don't add anything, but part of you wants to. You take the last door on the left. It opens into the machine room. Here, the main motor system for elevator D rests like a sleeping dragon. Coiled cables, large wheels, oil-stained tiles, and a single chair in the corner. Facing a dusty control panel. A teacup still rests on the panel's edge. There's no liquid, but the faint brown ring at the bottom suggests it wasn't abandoned too long ago. You lean over and examine the dials. One is marked, speed intent. Another, soothing delay. Both are set at mid-level. A procedural note scribbled on the panel's edge in red grease pencil says, Never adjust above 5 without whispering first. Underlined twice. A soft noise makes you turn. It's the feather. The clipped one. It's somehow here, now, resting on the chair's cushion. As if it followed you. But maybe it was always here. You breathe out slowly. You're not alone. But you're also not interrupted. The elevator hums again. Somewhere above. You feel that same pause in your chest, the quiet between motions. No panic. Just presence. And a soft, whispered sense of maintenance. You're back in the lobby now. Or at least what once was a lobby. This side of the building isn't open to the public anymore, hasn't been for years. You slip behind a cracked leather bench that faces no one and nothing. And through a door that bears a simple sign, records. No one guards it, nothing's locked. Inside, a hush. Not silence, because you can still hear the gentle, rhythmic clunk of an elevator car settling 2 floors above, but a hush like the room itself knows how to listen. The filing cabinets are beige. Metal, dented, labeled with delicate typewriter tags that have curled slightly at the corners. You find the one marked. Elevator logs 1960 to 1969 Hotel District. And inside, folders upon folders. Crisp paper. Pencil tick marks. Blue ink. Red grease pencil. Each folder is dedicated to one elevator in one hotel. And each of those folders contains hundreds of small maintenance cards. The cards follow a strict format: date, time, oil used, notes. But sometimes, the notes get weird. Lubricated rails, music from ballroom leaked through shaft, adjusted timing to match rhythm. Guest reported elevator, felt judgmental. Applied scent strip to interior panel. Peppermint, no further complaints. Fourth floor button sticks, not mechanically, emotionally. You blink, reread, nope, still there. A procedural detail in small print on the back of every log card. Do not report issues based on dreams unless observed twice while awake. Someone has underlined that rule on at least 7 cards. One has a sticky note, observed thrice. Still uncertain. You flip a few more. One features a drawing, a delicate sketch of the control panel, but with the buttons rearranged into a spiral. At the top, written in pencil, "Cabin requested this." You set that one gently aside. Deeper into the drawer now, you find a laminated guide titled Emergency Elevator Calming Techniques, Revised 1965. You flip it open. There's a list. 1. Speak in even tone, preferably baritone. 2. Avoid jokes unless pre-approved. 3. Do not use words like fall, plummet, or crash. 4. Use analog metaphors: cloud, drift, lull. 5. Maintain 4.2 milliliters lubrication on main rails at all times. Under optional methods, it lists: place a flower in the corner, hang a small chime on the inside of the shaft door, press your hand against the metal for 10 seconds. Say, you are safe. You're not sure whether this was designed for elevator passengers or for the elevators themselves. It's unclear, which might be the point. You look up and spot a wall-mounted clock. Its second hand ticks with soft effort. A brass plate beneath it reads, adjusted for shaft time drift 1962. You'd never considered that elevators might run on slightly different time. But the logs, well, they suggest otherwise. One folder holds nothing but skipped entries. That is, cards with no writing. Just the stamp of the elevator's ID. And the word, present. Sometimes repeated for days at a time. Just, present, present, present. You don't know if that means the elevator was fine. Or just, there. An open-ended note scribbled in the corner of one page reads, no log today. Cabin seemed sad. We left it alone. You close the drawer gently and turn toward the window. From here, you can see elevator D rising slowly, no passengers, like it just remembered something upstairs. Its movement is smooth, silent, a practiced routine. You remember the feather, the clipboard, the chair. You wonder, is this what care looks like? When no one's watching? Because for all the jokes about boredom and sleep and old manuals that put you to rest, this place feels tended, thoughtful, tender, even. There's a small envelope taped to the window frame. It reads, break in case of stillness. Inside, a single maintenance log card. Blank. A small, pre-sharpened pencil. And a note. You may write something if you feel like it. Or not. The elevator won't mind either way. You don't write anything. Not today. Instead, you step out into the hallway again. Walk slowly toward the stairs. Past the room with the feather. Past the shaft with the heartbeat. Back up to the lobby. And here, the morning light is filtering through the long-forgotten stained glass panel over the main doors. Dust swirls through the colored beams like soft signals, reds, greens, blues, all dancing in silence. You look back once at the panel of floor buttons beside the elevator. Floor 3 is lit. No one pushed it. Or maybe someone did. Or maybe it's just part of the rhythm now. You drift toward the reception desk. Though, reception, feels like too strong a word. There's no one there. Hasn't been for decades. The wood counter is cracked in the shape of Argentina itself. And the guest register is long gone. But just below the surface, tucked into a notch where a drawer used to be, you find something remarkable. A guest elevator feedback ledger. Cloth-bound, lined with faint blue ruling. The first entry is dated January 2nd, 1961, and reads, smooth ascent, pleasant oil aroma, slight delay on second floor but felt purposeful. You smile. Most of the entries follow a pattern. A simple checkbox grid for cabin cleanliness. sound profile, speed, and vibration. Each row ends with a blank space for additional impressions. That's where it gets weird. Cabin sighed when I entered. Felt polite. Music sounded like it was trying to remember a tune. There was a warm spot on the rear panel. Stayed there the whole ride. Comforting. Every now and then, a note in red ink. Flagged for tone inconsistency. Monitor. You imagine someone monitoring tone. Holding their ear close to the shaft. Maybe trying to pick up a sulk in the metal. Procedural detail tucked at the front of the book. All impressions logged regardless of perceived rationality. Elevators are complex systems with emergent behaviors. If in doubt, record. It's hard to tell if this is bureaucratic earnestness or something else. Reverence. Maybe. You flip a few pages forward. An entire entry is written in cursive French. The only line you can make out says, Je pense qu'il m'a reconnu. I think it recognized me. You pause. The ledger continues well into the late 1960s. And near the end you notice something subtle, the ink shifts color. What begins in blue-black ends in green. Then faint purple. Not ink someone brought from home. No, this is elevator desk ink. The kind that leaks from the drawer if you turn the bottle too fast. There's a note taped to the final page. Retired, December 1969. Elevator requested silence. You don't ask what that means. Instead, you walk toward the staff hallway, where the walls are painted a kind of beige that defies description. Somewhere between forgotten oatmeal and government sigh. A cleaning cart rests halfway down the corridor. It's wooden, no wheels, just iron-shod feet that scrape when dragged. Inside the cart is a small tin labeled GREASE, lift purposes only. Do not apply elsewhere. It smells like cloves and graphite. A laminated card tied with string hangs from the handle. Apply sparingly to counterweight chains. Every second Wednesday. Listen for tone change. The phrase, tone change, shows up everywhere. You're realizing, these people weren't just tuning elevators. They were listening to them. There's a closet at the end of the hall with no knob, just a notch. You hook your fingers and pull. Inside, floor tiles stacked like hymnals. Buckets. 3 plungers. A leather-bound instruction book titled Ascension Behavior, revised 1963. It's handwritten, by at least 5 different people. One passage reads, Cabin 2 refuses to ascend after 10 p.m. unless interior light is dimmed by 30%. Another. Elevator D emits a sharper whine when peppermint oil is absent from service room. You begin to sense a quiet relationship here, not just maintenance. Not just routine, a kind of stewardship. Like elevator techs were caretakers of something just barely mechanical. There's a final page, thinner than the rest, folded in thirds and tucked behind a loose panel. Written in pencil, and dated 1969. It simply says, they hum in the dark when no one listens. No explanation. But somehow, you believe it. You ease the door shut again and lean against the wall. Behind you, the elevator settles with a faint clink. Like a cat shifting in sleep. A new hum starts, not musical. Not mechanical. Just a sound of presence. Settled, listening, and somewhere in your head, a voice, not quite yours, whispers. Don't worry, we remember. Whatever that means. It feels like closure. Not the flashy kind, just the quiet sort. The kind that lets you exhale without noticing you were holding your breath. You pass one last door. Marked with brass letters, lift log, archive. It's locked. Of course it is. Some things stay unread. You're okay with that. You descend one last hallway. The light thinning like old tea. And the wallpaper curling just enough to whisper. There's no fanfare, no plaque saying, final stop. Just a plain wooden chair and a rust-colored door that opens without a sound. Inside, it's not a grand archive. Not even a maintenance hub. It's a kind of pause. A small room, barely lit, with shelving that rises only to chest height. On each shelf, a shoebox-sized tin. Labeled, numbered, faded. Cabin L2 oilcloths 1962-64. Service shaft D, whisper samples. Retired units, final lubrication tags. You don't open any, you just sit. The chair's got a dent shaped for waiting. On the far wall hangs a map of the hotel. Floor by floor. hand-inked in deep brown. Elevators are marked with simple circles, labeled not with numbers but with names. Clara, Sombra, Belle, Ernesto. They gave them names. Of course they did. One is circled in green. A handwritten note reads, "Now silent." Still responds. You glance around, expecting a hum, a creak, a blink. Nothing. Just breath-thick stillness. Procedural detail, scrawled near the edge of the map. Final lubrication entries must include one subjective line. Technician's impressions required by policy. You imagine someone kneeling with an oil can in hand, scribbling something poetic onto a clipboard. Smelled like cedar, felt like dusk. That would qualify. A shelf below holds just one thing, a bound book titled, Deferred Elevators. Its cover is dusty, its spine stitched with copper thread. You open to a random page. Unit 6B. Refuses descent during electrical storms. Operator advised to wait, not override. Unit L3. Only stops on even floors after midnight. Pattern noted, not corrected. The manual doesn't fight the elevator's decisions. It documents them. You flip to the back and find a line written in elegant cursive. It is not broken. It is particular. The room holds its breath with you. On a wall hook, a maintenance coat hangs, one of those short, zippered ones with the sleeves rolled 3 times. Perfectly. You slip your hand into the pocket. Curious. A folded scrap of paper. Soft from years of fingers. On it, written in tight print, "Thank you for listening." And beneath it, "Clara." It's not signed by a tech. It's signed by an elevator. You laugh. Softly. Maybe sleepily. Maybe just because it feels like the right reaction. Unresolved detail. No one knows who maintained the elevators after 1970. The logs end. The manuals go quiet. But the lifts? They still work. Mostly. Guests still ride them. Still note how they feel somehow aware. One elderly doorman, when asked how the elevators have held up so well, just says, "We don't fix them. We respect them." Maybe that's the manual's secret. Not oil viscosity charts or brush alignment specs, but reverence. You rise from the chair. Walk slowly back down the hall. The carpet underfoot sighs a little. The walls feel closer now, but not in a bad way. It's just the hotel exhaling, knowing you're finished. You pause once more by the lift lobby. The buttons still glow. One of them flickers, then steadies, like a nod. Click. That quiet sound again. You don't press anything. You just stand there, hearing nothing but your own breath and the hum of certainty in the walls. No beeps. No announcements. No signs telling you what to do. Just a lingering sense that you've been let into something private. Something preserved. And now, the hotel folds gently around that knowing, closing not like a door, but like a page. So now, as the oil settles back into its grooves and the echo of clipboards fades like elevator music drifting down a stairwell, you let yourself relax fully. The doors no longer open, no longer close, they simply wait. At rest, humming gently with memory, you feel the weight of brass buttons and call signals fall away, leaving behind only warmth, a kind of archival calm. The lights dim, not all at once, but gradually, like the final few digits of a worn page number fading into parchment. You can still smell the faint mechanical sweetness of old lubricants, like tin mixed with lavender, and hear the faraway thrum of machines' content to pause. You've walked through a system built on rules and routines, but somehow never rigid. In those quiet hallways of Buenos Aires, the manuals don't demand, they invite. They offer their pages like soft-spoken suggestions, not commands. A gentle index finger resting beside a diagram, asking, maybe here, maybe now. And as your breath slows, you can imagine the elevators dreaming, too. Each cable a lullaby, each shaft a sigh. You don't need to descend or rise, just stay. In the middle, suspended. The shift is complete. Everything is still. Everything is held. And so are you. Hey guys. Tonight we're heading to the platform at Nairobi Central Station, where the light leaks down through old steel rafters and puddles softly on concrete etched by decades of wading shoes. The maroon and cream train before you hums faintly, not impatient, just aware of its own presence. Its brass numbers are dulled by time, its windows hazy with years of early morning dew and long-distance stories. It smells of warm metal, faded paper, and something distinctly railway-ish, like if nostalgia had a scent and someone kept it in a tin box under a seat. The air is thick but not heavy. You feel a slight vibration underfoot. Somewhere, someone's wheeling a cart stacked with thermoses. Somewhere else, a child is already asking how much longer. You place your hand gently on the rail and step aboard. And tonight, we're not talking about romance, revolution, or epic journeys. No, we're here for something much quieter: seat codes. Specifically, Kenyan Railway seat codes from 1978, and the tea-break charts that accompanied them. This story might spark your curiosity, or just put you gently to sleep. Either way, I'm glad you're here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle into your seat, which is not merely a seat but a mapped coordinate. You're in 4CR, 4th row. Seat C, right side, and there's something satisfying about how firmly that identity fits. The upholstery is a rough ochre weave, faded at the corners but still proud. There's a thin metal plate screwed into the wooden armrest with the seat code etched neatly by hand. Someone once polished it, maybe more than once, but no one's done it lately. Each coach is organized by an invisible grid, preserved in charts you'll never see unless you bribe a steward or marry into train operations. Rows are lettered front to back, with C and D usually facing forward, except on alternating Fridays. When they don't, and no one ever updates the chart. That's just how it is. The codes are logical, but not always intuitive. For instance, L doesn't mean left. It means long side, a reference to older rail cars that had reversible seat backs. And 7AR was never beside 7AL. It was 3 seats and a luggage rack away, because of a 1962 redesign that squeezed in an extra boiler cabinet. A factual procedural detail worth noting: in the 1978 Seat Allocation Directive, issued by the East African Railways, there's a regulation stating that code discontinuity must be preserved to allow for operational variance in sleeper conversion. In plain English, gaps in the numbering are intentional. So if you're looking for 6D and find 6C followed by 7A, you're not wrong, you're just in the fold. What's most charming, if you're the kind of person who finds charm in the placement of wooden seats, is how seat labeling was done by hand. Not machine, not etched, not embossed, but stenciled, using thin brushes and white paint that cracks beautifully over time. Some of the B, S look like 8S now. Some L, S droop slightly, like they've given up being perpendicular. As you settle in further, you notice the odd little quirks. The seat back pocket in front of you has a small slip stitched into the top corner. Just big enough for a single tea menu, though few passengers know what it's for. Most shove in newspapers, or chicken bones, if you're unlucky. An open-ended note here: there's always one seat, usually in the second coach, where the seat code has been rubbed away entirely, just a flat metal strip. No letter, no number. The stewards ignore it. Passengers argue about what it was. Some swear it used to be 3E. Others say it never had a designation. The manual is silent. Outside the window, the light shifts slightly as the train shutters once. Ready to go but not quite summoned. You glance across the aisle and see a woman in a faded orange headscarf glance down at her own seat code, 6BR, and tap it twice with her fingernail. You don't know why, but she does it with certainty. You lean back. The carriage breathes. A warm breeze slips in through the narrow opening of the window vent, carrying the scent of diesel and someone's breakfast curry. You close your eyes for just a moment and hear a distant clink, the brass seat tag of 5DL being adjusted. Perhaps it echoes like a small decision. The train still hasn't moved. And that's okay. This story isn't about movement. It's about the systems behind it. The codes, the tags, the quiet choreography of placement. You're already inside the logic. Somewhere behind you, a steward straightens a fold-out chart tucked between 2 cabin walls. The chart doesn't explain seat codes. It's just labeled Passenger Complaints Alignment. The first column says, Noted. The second, Repositioned, and the third is blank. Always blank. That's the thing about these codes, they're almost always precise. But never quite final. The train lurches forward, just a nudge at first. Like it's changing its mind mid-thought. You feel it more than hear it. In the way your shoulder shifts slightly in the seat and the teacup on the steward's tray gives a tiny ring against the saucer. Out the window, Nairobi begins to blur, not in a cinematic sweep. Just a gentle pixelation of bus stops and rooflines. You're not alone in your interest. A boy across the aisle peers at his armrest plate like he's deciphering an ancient rune. He asks his grandmother, "Why is mine LR and yours is just R?" She shrugs, then smiles. Maybe mine is more sure of itself. There's a manual for these codes, of course there is. It's called the Kenya Railways Internal Seating Allocation and Passenger Comfort Orientation Guidebook. Revised in May of 1978. The name alone feels padded. Like it wants you to fall asleep halfway through saying it. The first few pages are technical drawings. Bench layouts, bolt placements, seat pitch tolerances, but it's the handwritten notations in the margins that catch your eye. Someone scrawled, "Test with elbow room," beside diagram 4A. Another page has a coffee ring right across a section titled, "Diagonal Seat Staggering," for improved elbow discipline. But what you're really here for are the T-charts. You reach into the seat back pocket and pull out a yellowed trifold leaflet labeled Service Routine. Beverage Tier, Regional 2B. It smells faintly of dust, tannin, and mango peel. Inside, there's a grid, time slots, cabin zones, beverage codes, a schedule so specific it includes buffer time for tea leaf blooming, exactly 70 seconds. No more, no less. A factual detail here, in 1978. Train stewards were issued metal timer clips, brass, shaped like a ladybug, with a tiny rotating dial. These were used to time the steeping process for premium-tier black teas served only between carriages 2 and 4. And only after 9:47 a.m. Outside those parameters, you got bagged blend, no exceptions. One quirk you'll notice is how the charts always overplan for peppermint, which almost no one orders. It's listed 3 times, once as light mentha, once as green refresh, and once, in a misprint never corrected, as mint leaf. The stewards know what you mean, but they'll still chuckle. At 10:12 a.m. sharp, the tea cart arrives in your section. The steward is dressed in a crisp tan uniform with a badge that says, Beatrice 11Y certified. You don't ask what 11Y means. It's better that way. She stops beside your seat and without asking says, "Today's service, red label or strong black with nutmeg." You blink. Nutmeg? You nod anyway. She pours, tilts the cup precisely 15 degrees as she serves, standard posture to avoid slosh on incline. You glance down at the chart and see it. Cell E5, seat code range 4AL to 6CR. Add aromatic. You're in the range. Nutmeg is happening. Resistance is futile. Another procedural detail. Every train carried 3 emergency infusion bags, stored in a compartment beneath the steward's seat. These were strictly for protocol breach, like if someone from sleeper class wandered into general and requested ginger chai. It happened once. The incident is logged. Your cup is warm in your palm, and the train's sway adds rhythm to each sip. You glance toward the corner of the coach and spot a tiny metal hook with nothing hanging from it. That's where tea cloths used to go, light cotton towels used to test pour angle by wet line absorption. Phased out in 1975. Replaced by eyeball method. Certified. A mystery, though, on some older trains. There's a 4th line scribbled in pencil at the bottom of the chart. Do not brew near station 46. No reason given. No station by that number exists now. Some say it referred to an old signal post. Others whisper about strange steam smells when you did. But the rule stays. Even Beatrice doesn't steep near it. You notice her skip it on the return pass. Your tea is half gone now. And you start to feel the ritual of the thing. The way the codes, the grids, the charts, all these systems, don't fight the journey. They choreograph it, not to dominate, but to guide, to suggest a smoother rhythm. A woman 2 rows up mutters something about mint timing being off. and Beatrice calmly checks the timer clip on her tray. She doesn't argue, just nods, flips the dial back by 30 seconds and moves on. You notice that she hums in even time with the rattle of the tracks. You wonder if they train that too. Out the window, the landscape opens, flat scrubland. The occasional baobab, sunlight flickering in and out through breaks in the trees. But inside the carriage, you're inside a system, inside a world of tags, tiles, and timelines, and you feel strangely held. You take your last sip, and the nutmeg finish leaves a whisper on your tongue. Not bold, not quite explainable, just there. And like that, Beatrice is gone, already 3 rows ahead, already matching steam to time zones, already adjusting for the breeze near the vestibule. One last detail you notice before folding up the leaflet and sliding it back into the pocket. A column labeled, Discretionary Pause, SPT. You don't know what sulfur monophosphide T means. Neither does Beatrice. The manual simply says, use sparingly. Trust your sense. You think that's good advice for life. Really. The tea settles in your stomach like a warm agreement. Somewhere between routine and reward. Outside, the scenery slips past in long swaths of beige and green. But inside this carriage, you're still knee-deep in the architecture of assigned comfort. You glance again at the seat code, RM, embossed in fading silver on the curved backplate beside your left arm. It stands for, right mid-range, of course. A designation not just for location but for service tier, airflow expectation, and, if the 1978 seating manual is to be believed, moderate lumbar vigilance. Which is to say, don't slouch. But no one's watching, supposedly. You shift slightly to test it. Yes, there's a firmness, not aggressive, but firm enough to discourage napping in the wrong direction. The cushion dips only so far. The seat reclines exactly 11 degrees. Unless someone before you sabotaged the latch, which is a common rebellion among nighttime passengers. There's a tiny diagram etched into the armrest, almost invisible unless you look at just the right angle. It's a line of 3 dots with a small triangle above the middle one. That's the old symbol for Tri Alignment Approved, referring to a short-lived 1977 policy requiring each seat's alignment to correspond with a theoretical comfort triangle mapped across the coach floor. The idea, according to the manual, was to maximize diagonal gaze paths for conversational seating without encouraging direct eye contact. In simpler terms, be near people, but don't talk too much. Very 1970s. Some of the stewards called it the triangle cult and joked about drawing it in chalk before service. The policy was retired in under 6 months, but a few seat codes still bear the insignia. You smile at the triangle. You feel initiated. You reach into the flap behind your tray table and pull out the real treasure, the seat code glossary, Domestic Variant 2, DV2. It's a brittle foldout printed in orange ink on laminated cardstock. The kind of lamination that always seems like it might peel, but never does. You scan the rows. LF, left forward. Best airflow near ceiling fans. CR, center right. Warmest seat in rainy season. LE, legacy end, reserved for staff or dignitaries pre-1975. Now used mostly for extra storage or naps. One code stands out, SPX. It simply says, no assigned comfort, interpret freely. An oddity, according to the margins. It was only issued for seat 12B on the Kisumu line. No one's quite sure why. Another factual detail. When the codes were originally distributed, stewards were given a 14-page booklet titled Tone and Posture, Seat Introduction Scripts by Class. It included sample phrases like, you're in a cool seat today, plenty of breeze if you lean left. And, this one's firm. Like your grandmother's chair. By regulation, all passengers were to be told their seat's personality before sitting. By 1980, this became optional. By 1983, forgotten entirely. You feel slightly cheated. No one told you your seat's story. You look to your right and see an older gentleman tapping his seat arm 3 times. Softly, he waits, then settles in. You wonder if it's superstition or calibration. He catches your eye and shrugs. That's just how you wake it up. A quirk to note, seat RG, right gallery, has a reputation among stewards. Not because of comfort, but because it's directly in line with the compartment's middle breeze axis. During monsoon months, it gets the perfect diagonal wind. Some call it the float seat. Others believe it curses your tea. No one knows for sure. You stretch your legs and notice the tiny brass disc embedded in the floor under your left foot. It's only the size of a coin and labeled P. The manual calls it a pivot point, part of a forgotten system designed to let the entire carriage breathe during curve turns. The discs never worked, but they remained, embedded like little secrets. Outside the window, the sun is climbing, and the landscape begins to vibrate with heat. But inside the coach, the seating codes remain stable. These tiny designations, cryptic letters, subtle angles, old floor pivots, build a kind of cozy bureaucracy. Not the cold kind, the comforting kind, like someone took the time to measure your posture before you arrived. The steward returns, this time holding a clipboard. Not for tickets, not even for tea, it's the pause chart. She says, for tracking discretionary seating adjustments. You nod, pretending to understand. She glances at your seat plate, writes a single line, RM, settled. No shift. You ask her, quietly, what it means. She smiles. It means you look like you belong there. The train hums underneath, content with your stillness. You press your palm to the armrest and feel the vibration. The wood is worn smooth, varnished over. Sanded again. 1,000 arms before yours have done this. There's comfort in that. And still, an unresolved mystery, in all the glossaries and updates. No one has ever confirmed what the PX in SPX actually stood for. Passenger experimental, post-exchange, pre-exhausted. Everyone has a theory. No one agrees. You settle into your moderate lumbar vigilance and glance again at the little triangle symbol. You still don't fully understand it, but you feel like it understands you. The train continues, and the seats hold steady. There's a distinct rhythm to travel here. Not in the motion of the train, that part hums along predictably, but in the rituals. Every element, from footplate to window latch, seems governed by an unwritten agreement, and nowhere is that more apparent than the tea break charts. You first notice it in the steward's hand, a narrow, double-folded card, laminated like a library pass and nearly as battered. On one side, blocky columns in red and green ink, on the other. A timeline so precise it could be a train schedule in miniature. It is, in a way. This, you realize, is the official tea rotation and pouring chart. 1978 Revision C issued to all dining stewards and cart attendants operating on the Nairobi-Mombasa line. Though versions existed elsewhere too, each one adjusted slightly for geography, train speed, and humidity. The chart does not merely say, serve tea at 10 o'clock. No, that would be too easy. Instead, it's a matrix. Columns for coach type, rows for time of day. Add a diagonal for weather, cloudy, sunny, overcast then sunny, and you land in a shaded cell that says something like, pour slow. Mid-palette, clockwise pass. It's beautiful nonsense, and yet, entirely followed. The procedural detail? Each train steward was trained to follow the sip gap rule, ensuring no coach went more than 37 minutes between warm beverages. A whistle was sometimes used, once for approach, twice for pour. Modern logic is nowhere to be found. You watch as a steward begins the ritual. A brass-handled kettle, polished until it catches your reflection in reverse. Small ceramic cups stacked like clamshells on a tray edged in frayed blue felt. She doesn't speak, just moves from row to row, wrist angled precisely. She reaches your seat and pauses, not because you've done anything wrong, but because the chart says, delay pour 5 seconds at RM if adjacent seat is empty. Which it is, so she waits. 5 seconds, eyes on the kettle, like it might rebel if ignored. Then she pours. The tea lands perfectly, no splash, no overflow. You feel seen. There's a quirk on the back of the chart, tiny, nearly illegible notes in red ink. One reads, do not serve if butterfly visible through right side window. Another simply says, skip section C during mango bloom. No one has explained either, though a former steward once muttered that butterflies spooked the thermos lids. You ask quietly if she ever deviates from the chart. She gives you the kind of look only a tired perfectionist gives. You can bend the spoon. not the poor. You nod, pretending you understand. Across the aisle, an older man stirs his tea exactly 6 times. Then rests the spoon across the rim, a little ritual of his own. Maybe he wrote the chart. Maybe he's just honoring it. Either way, he doesn't spill a drop. The steward moves on. At the front of the coach, there's a metal bracket affixed to the wall. Inside, a backup copy of the tea break chart, sealed in plastic, with a brass snap button. For emergencies only, the label says. You imagine the kind of crisis that would call for it, probably thunder. Or a full moon. An unresolved detail lives in the margins. Some 1978 copies of the chart have a cell labeled temporal discretion. No explanation follows. Some think it was for stewards who got behind. Others say it was for trains that crossed into moments where time felt different, elevated bridges, tunnels, or sunrises too pretty to interrupt. You finish your tea. It's both too hot and perfectly warm, depending on which sip you remember. The train leans gently into a bend, and your cup slides half an inch toward the window, then stops, right on cue. You glance again at the steward. Now 3 rows down. She taps the rim of a cup before pouring. A superstition, or a technique? Hard to say, but the sound is soft and comforting. One more obscure quirk. The Nairobi division once experimented with adding a scent to the cups, jasmine or clove, depending on month. The 1979 revision quietly removed the clause. Too romantic. Someone wrote in the margin. You kind of miss it. And you weren't even there. You study your chart copy again, which you were politely handed after expressing continued interest. You trace the red line for sunny morning. Narrow gauge. Class 2 coaches. Your cell says, serve briskly. Avoid direct eye contact during pour. A note of British colonial legacy. Maybe, or just shyness. Immortalized. The steward passes again, offering seconds. You decline, not because you don't want more, but because the chart says only 1 refill per session unless accompanied by a biscuit. And no biscuits today. You respect the order. Outside, the terrain flattens into scrubland. Occasional jacaranda trees flashing purple between dry fields. Inside, cups return to trays, steam fades, and spoons clink in unison. Like a slow applause, you close your eyes, just for a moment, and imagine a world where all refreshment is this ceremonial. Every drink served not for thirst, but for balance. The train hums, your cup settles, and the chart, somewhere above your head, quietly moves on to the next entry. The seats creak when the train bends into a shallow curve, each one just a little different. A subtle wooden vocabulary of the car. You've started to notice things now. Not just people and tea, but the geometry of the carriage. The numbers etched on every brass plate. The codes. Every seat in this car, and in every Kenyan railway car built before 1982, is coded, not just with a number, but with an embedded logic. It's not random, oh, no. The seat codes follow a system so peculiar and oddly poetic. It deserves a chart of its own. And, of course, there is one. The Recliner Index and Occupancy Classification Schedule. August 1978, is a folded, water-stained sheet tucked behind the emergency brake box. Not in a frame, not laminated, just there, as if someone placed it long ago and the train respected its presence. You trace it now with your finger. Rows labeled A through K, columns labeled with a mix of digits and letters, 1, 2, 3, then LM, and a rogue Z. Your own seat reads, D4M. And only now do you realize what that means. D, for directional orientation, facing east. Today. 4, for fourth from the carriage divider. M, for medium incline. Procedural detail? Each passenger car is required to offer a minimum of 6 M code seats, evenly distributed on both port and starboard sides, according to a 1977 regulation that actually included a clause on napping fairness. That's not a joke. A small brass tab is affixed to your armrest. It flips up to reveal a ridged slider. You move it experimentally. Nothing happens, at first. Then, slowly, the seat leans back with a tiny sigh. Somewhere underneath, a spring catches with a hesitant click. You're reclining now, gently, modestly, as was the style. Across the aisle, a seat labeled G2Z does something different. It folds slightly forward before reclining. as if emotion requires a bow. It's almost courtly. You make a mental note to try that one on the return journey. The chart includes footnotes. One says, Z-coded seats may induce rear leg bounce at certain speeds. Another, seat type L requires floor brace checks during April. It's unclear whether anyone enforces these. Then there's the quirk you've heard whispers about, seat C3 in coach B always hums. No matter the passenger. It's not electrical, it's mechanical. A soft vibration from the carriage base that feels like being gently reminded of something you forgot. Not annoying, just persistent. There's no mention of it in the manual. A woman sits in that seat today. She hums along, perfectly in tune. Maybe she's always known, or maybe she's hearing it for the first time and simply adapted. Either way, it's lovely. Further down, a conductor passes with a leather-bound clipboard. He's not checking tickets. He's making notes. You catch a glimpse. G5M, squeak noted. Oil tray Y suggested. He nods to no one in particular and moves on. Another steward swaps a small metal wedge beneath a reclining mechanism. He whistles a tune that matches the click of each adjustment. You wonder if it's choreographed or if the train itself is composing. One more oddity. The code, E1L, was retired after 1979 due to excessive tilt in hot months. The clause exists in the Nairobi archives. Red stamped, obsolete. Still, older coaches sometimes carry the plate. You check the overhead rack and, sure enough, find one near the end, painted over. But just barely. You run your palm over your seat's backrest. There's a seam you hadn't noticed. A tiny tag sewn inside reads, Property of Kenya Railways Upholstery Unit. Kikuyu Division. The stitching is perfect. Tight like a notebook's spine. The sun flickers through passing trees, casting a slow-motion strobe across the aisle. Seat plates glint. Passengers settle. Recline codes click and hold. Little mechanical sighs of acceptance. You imagine someone, decades ago, diagramming these codes at a long drafting table, nib pen in hand, sipping lukewarm tea, somewhere between engineer and poet. They had opinions about tilt angles. Clearly, preferences about lumbar arc. And you? You're just grateful the manual exists. That someone, somewhere, cared enough to alphabetize comfort. Your head rests back, the train hums forward, and the chart, folded but never forgotten, explains the world one letter at a time. You're drifting now, not asleep, not quite awake, somewhere in that space where memory becomes just a little more textured, like paper that's been handled too many times. The sound of the train is a lullaby of friction and steel. And now, it's tea time, again. You look down the aisle and see the tea steward returning. This time with a different tray. It's smaller, polished tin with handles bent from age. There are fewer cups, but more confidence. This is the second tea round. The calmer one. The, you're here now. No rush, round. This one follows a chart. 2. Of course it does. Pinned discreetly behind a curtain in the service galley is the Kenyan Rail Hospitality Timing Schedule. Domestic Journeys Only, Revised Edition, 1978. Laminated, just barely. The chart is divided into 3 zones based on time of day and altitude. Because apparently, elevation affects tea strength. According to the chart, stewards must adjust brew time by 15 seconds for every 200 meters climbed after Nakuru. This is marked as a sensitivity factor. You're pretty sure no one is measuring the exact elevation. But the steward pours with an elegant rhythm that suggests instinct over instruments. A factual detail to sip on, each steward is issued a personal tea thermometer. Stored in a narrow felt pouch stitched with their badge number. Most don't use it anymore. But you spot one dangling from a buttonhole on the steward's apron like a medal of quiet precision. This round of tea is stronger. Less playful. A bit more serious. The kind you sip slowly, while staring out a window and wondering why everyone else in the world isn't on this train. A seatmate across from you flips open a small chart booklet from the seat pocket. It's labeled, Refreshment Ratios. Coach D. It contains preferred sugar ratios for each seat row. You blink at that. Is it a joke? A leftover relic from a time when passengers were polled on such things? Apparently not. The steward pours 1 cup. Pauses. Adds half a teaspoon of sugar. then stirs with an engraved spoon, seat number matching the stir handle. G5M. Again. The quirks keep piling on. One corner of the chart has a faint coffee ring. Another has a scribbled note, "No cinnamon after dusk, per KT directive." Who was KT? Why cinnamon? And then there's the illustration. In the middle of the page, a tiny drawing of a teacup with steam curling into the shape of Mount Kenya. It's beautifully done. No explanation, no caption, just, there. You take a sip of your tea and taste something slightly floral. Not in a perfumed way. More like a whisper of the countryside. You wonder what type of leaves they used. The steward sees your curiosity and, without prompting, says, "Blend 3A. Coast sourced. Short steeped. Good for curves." Good for curves? You nod, as if that makes perfect sense. Because at this point, of course it does. A procedural oddity. The hospitality chart mandates that tea served after 11:42 a.m. must be accompanied by a polite carbohydrate. The steward complies. A square biscuit, wrapped in parchment, not quite sweet, not quite savory, definitely dry. It's deeply satisfying. You rest the biscuit on your palm for a moment, appreciating the embossing, an old railway logo barely visible in the crumbly surface. You break it in half with reverence and hear, somewhere further down the carriage, another biscuit breaking in time with yours. A shared ritual. There's a man reading a maintenance pamphlet 2 rows ahead. Not a novel, not a newspaper, just a folded instructional leaflet titled Lubrication Checks, Latch and Bolt, Seat Frame Edition. He reads slowly, one eyebrow raised, sipping tea like he's absorbing a sacred text. Then you notice the steward folding up his tray, returning toward the galley, but not before placing one last item on the armrest beside you, a napkin. It's embroidered with your seat code. You blink, just once, then you smile. This train isn't just a journey. It's a conversation between paper and people, manuals and memories. You lean back, sip your floral coastal blend, and listen as the tea cart's wheels click softly away, another coded rhythm. One the tracks themselves seem to recognize. The tea is fading into you now, warmth radiating from your chest outward like ink bleeding into handmade paper. You're just beginning to settle when something subtle changes, a shift in rhythm. A new sound layered beneath the old ones. It's the turn of the seat backs. You glance around and notice it. Quiet but deliberate. The slow tilt of passengers adjusting their seats, not to recline, but to pivot. A full 5 degrees leftward. Nearly in unison. Yes, there's a chart for that too. Tucked between the pages of the onboard booklet is a small fold-out labeled Seat Alignment Preferences during Solar Transition Zones. It explains, in affectionate bureaucratic language, that during westbound travel between 12:50 p.m. and 2:30 p.m., passengers on the left side of the carriage are encouraged to pivot their seat backs slightly toward the window to minimize glare and maximize reflective tranquility. Passengers on the right are to remain neutral. No one enforces it, no one needs to. It's simply understood, passed down from conductor to traveler like a railway lullaby. You try it yourself. A small metal lever beneath your seat clicks twice, once decisively. Then a gentler echo. You turn your seat a few degrees leftward. And suddenly, the view realigns. The trees no longer blur, they hum. The light no longer burns, it brushes. A factual detail you wouldn't have guessed. These pivoting seat backs were introduced in the 1976 carriage overhaul project, which also updated the frame codes, latch fasteners, and armrest curvature standards. Seat models manufactured prior to that year had to be retrofitted by hand, a task detailed in the companion guide titled Manual Adjustments for Pre-Transition Seating Units. Only 3 known copies of that guide still exist. One is rumored to be locked inside a train station drawer in Kisumu, wrapped in wax paper and tied with twine. You wouldn't be surprised. A woman across the aisle pulls out a small embroidered cloth and wipes the brass adjustment lever before turning her seat. She's done this before. Her fingers trace the motion without hesitation. She tucks the cloth back into her bag. No eye contact, no acknowledgement, just the calm choreography of someone living by the manual. Now, here's a quirk. Each seat's pivot lever emits a slightly different sound when engaged. Some click with a soft thunk. Others rattle like a maraca played 3 rooms away. One is practically silent, just a breath of a movement. As if respecting the sanctity of nap time. You try tuning in to the clicks around you. Like bird calls, a whole flock of coordinated adjustments echoing down the corridor. It feels like a meeting you weren't invited to, but somehow still part of. An elderly gentleman 2 rows back leans toward his neighbor and offers a small laminated card. Preferred seat angles for daydreaming, a user's companion. It lists diagrams of head positions with accompanying train speeds. One includes an asterisk. Best used between Eldoret and Gilgal when light is diffused and goats are visible. You don't see any goats. But you adjust your head anyway. Outside, the trees keep passing. Inside, the light softens further. The curve of the carriage window creates a natural halo around your reflection. You study it briefly, then look past it to the landscape, motionless. Despite the motion, one unresolved note tucked into the seatback chart, during tilt. Some users may experience a sensation of mild optimism. This is normal. It will pass. You laugh softly at that. But it's true. You feel it, this gentle, aimless optimism, like you're going nowhere in particular. But everything will be fine when you get there. The conductor walks by, nods once, and taps the side of your seat gently. Not to correct, just to acknowledge. Your angle is good. Your posture, acceptable. You've passed the invisible inspection. He moves on, hands clasped behind his back like a museum docent among exhibits made of soft leather and faded brass. Your seat sighs beneath you, as if relieved to be properly aligned. This is the kind of travel no one advertises anymore, the art of doing almost nothing. But doing it precisely. You glance at the seat code plaque near your feet, L4W. There's a faint scratch beside it, maybe carved long ago with a key or the edge of a coin. It's shaped vaguely like a flower. Maybe a hibiscus. Maybe someone's name, long since worn away. You wonder how many people sat in this very seat. Tilted it just so, adjusted their tray to the gentle arc position, and watched the Rift Valley blur past through fingerprinted glass. The train hums. The sun has moved. And so have you. The train doesn't hurry. It doesn't need to. It's made peace with slowness, a pace so steady it almost feels meditative. Outside, the sky shifts again, the sharp brightness of early afternoon fading into something warmer, more forgiving. Inside, the tea scent lingers, mingled now with something faintly metallic, a whisper of axle, a breath of hot brass. You look down and notice the tray in front of you. It folds neatly from the wall, secured by a tiny latch no wider than a coin. The mechanism clicks open with an almost playful hesitation, as if it's not entirely convinced you deserve access. But then it yields. The surface of the tray is lightly scuffed, patterned with hundreds of gentle half-circles, traces of mugs and biscuit tins past. You run your hand along the edge and feel the texture shift. In the bottom corner, barely visible unless you're looking for it, is a small printed grid, the tea break chart. This is where things get specific. A factual inclusion. In 1978, the Kenya Railways Catering Division adopted a standardized tea break chart for long-haul routes, dividing passenger refreshment moments into 3 categories: early fortification, post-meridian pause, and pre-sunset consolation. Each was accompanied by temperature ranges, suggested biscuit pairings, and ideal tray angles for spill prevention. Yes, angles. Your tray should rest at precisely 7.5 degrees during post-meridian pause, supposedly to encourage natural slosh diffusion. Whatever that means, the manual never explains. Today, you're clearly in pause territory. You lean the tray slightly, just for fun, and watch the shallow ridges guide an imaginary spill to one corner. Like a tiny canal system built by obsessive engineers with too much time and too little budget. There's a satisfaction in it. Across the aisle, someone unfolds their own tray and places a worn thermos with a tiny red sticker reading, "Sunset only." They're early, or nostalgic, or just ignoring the system completely. You respect that. Meanwhile, a couple seats down, an elderly woman in a mustard-colored cardigan unscrews the top of a pale green flask. Steam escapes like a whispered promise. She pours with care, then aligns her cup exactly along the printed outline of a traditional railway teacup, a faded white silhouette with scalloped edges and a dot in the center. It's not mandatory, but it's polite. A man walks by with a biscuit tin under his arm. He's humming a tune you can't quite place. Something between a lullaby and an advertising jingle. You catch a glimpse of the label. Approved for afternoon only, ginger with moderate crumble. Classic 1978 categorization. You think about the people who wrote these guidelines. The committee that once met under flickering bulbs in Nairobi. Taste-testing digestive biscuits while arguing about sugar thresholds and the spill radius of ceramic cups. You hope they felt important. Because, in a quiet way, they were. And now here you are. Decades later, following their chart like gospel. Tilting your tray, timing your tea, nodding slightly when the train glides over a joint in the tracks and your cup shivers, but doesn't spill. A procedural detail. The tray itself is part of Model 6B. Introduced in 77. Made of pressed aluminum with a double fold edge. The latch system was updated in early 1979 after an incident involving a dropped mango chutney sandwich in Eldoret. No one was hurt, but the manual now includes a reminder. Engage fully before placing perishables. You make a mental note. Here's a quirk you didn't expect. Some trays include etched initials. Not from passengers, but from conductors, a quiet tradition of marking trays with the year of service commencement. JO 74. MK 81. You trace one with your finger. Wondering where MK is now. Probably retired, hopefully drinking tea somewhere with better biscuit options. You stare at the chart again. Underneath the triangle of brakes is a fourth box, blank. No label, no instructions, just empty space. Unresolved, unexplained. Some say that box was meant for emergencies. Others say it's symbolic, a space for moments between moments. For the passenger who never takes tea, but still needs somewhere to rest their book. You decide it's your box now. A place for stillness. You fold your hands over it. Feel the vibration of the train through your knuckles. And just sit. The conductor returns, this time slower, pausing to watch passengers at their trays. He adjusts one that's misaligned, nods once, and moves on. No words, just quiet satisfaction. You glance out the window. The Rift Valley has opened wider now. Its flat stretches interrupted by flashes of green, banana groves, crooked eucalyptus, the occasional white goat doing nothing in particular. The world feels like it's waiting. Not for anything big, just the next click, the next tilt, the next soft pour. You breathe in, you press your palms lightly against the tray. And in your pocket, unnoticed until now, you find a folded paper napkin. The corner has a tiny stamp, KRT approved second class. May 1978. You smooth it out, you smile, because here, even the napkins have history. The train sighs, yes. That's the only word for it, into a lower gear as it curls gently around a hill that seems to exist solely to be admired. You've noticed by now that the rhythm of this ride isn't about destination, but demonstration, of patience, of geometry, of tea-related grace. Your tray is still out. The cup is still warm. You're debating whether to tuck it back into the wall. But somehow it feels like more effort than letting it be. Besides, you're now in that golden in-between phase of a journey. Not quite halfway, not quite done, suspended like a biscuit between dips. Across from you, a laminated seat code card is tucked into a sliver of the vinyl headrest. Someone's been chewing on the corner. You gently pull it out and smooth it against your knee, revealing the faded title. Kenya Railways Assigned Seating Matrix 1978 Revision, Loop C. It's not flashy, just rows of numbers, a few acronyms, and more beige than should be allowed on any official document, but it's oddly compelling. You begin to decode. A factual inclusion, in 1978. The Loop C route introduced a two-letter seat code system for all non-sleeper cars. First letter denoted position relative to the boiler compartment, F for forward, R for rear, while the second marked T eligibility, A for automatic tray, M for manual flask, X for tray exempt. Your seat? Raw 7. Rear. Automatic. You feel a swell of pride. Beneath the code section is a table labeled Passenger Visibility Zones. That's new. You scan it. Apparently. Seats in columns 3 and 4 were designated for optimal landscape orientation, while columns 6 through 9 were unofficially flagged as low-glare nap zones. There's even a note in the margin, printed, not scribbled, that reads, "May vary by season. Cloud cover. Or goat presence." You blink. Goat presence? A quirk worth noting, Loop C was infamous for unexpected goat encounters, sometimes inside stations, once on the tracks, and famously once aboard. The manual includes a cautionary clause, in the event of caprine interference. Adjust seat orientation as needed to preserve passenger tranquility. No one ever explains why goats were so common. But the phrase, caprine interference, deserves its own medal. You glance around. No goats today. Just a man 2 rows up adjusting his paper seat code card into the perfect diagonal. He's serious about it, like a pilot checking dials. You watch as he taps the bottom twice, folds the edge precisely to match the corner of the headrest, then relaxes like a job well done. Your own card feels slightly off now. You nudge it left, then right, then decide, no, it's fine, let it lean, it's earned the right. You find another folded guide in the pouch beneath the window. A newer print, though still unmistakably 70s. It's titled, Seating Protocols for Thermal Consistency. You open it. Inside are illustrations, simple line sketches, of people seated with various postures, accompanied by labels like, equidistant sit, slouch adjacent, and recline offset, with hat. Each has a coded recommendation: increase airflow, deploy lap shawl, request emergency fan override, form 402C. And there's a bolded procedural box labeled simply, the T, seat compromise. You read. It explains how in heat-prone cars, tea is to be served diagonally, passenger facing northwest. Seat tilted 12 degrees, window latched at midpoint. Supposedly it improves cooling and reduces glare. Supposedly. The official manual never mentions why northwest. Just that it's strongly advised. Maybe someone liked the sunset angle. Maybe it's all superstition laminated into policy. You test it. You shift. You turn. Northwest-ish. Maybe. There's no compass on board. But your instincts are decent. The air does feel slightly cooler. You decide it works. Across the aisle, another passenger opens a biscuit tin labeled, Tuesday only. It's clearly Wednesday. They glance around, pop the lid, and eat anyway. You nod. We're all rebels here. Then, a ripple, like a change in pressure. The conductor appears again, this time holding a clipboard with a long orange sticker down the side, thermal round, seat code audit. You stifle a laugh. The phrase feels too grand for this sleepy carriage. He moves slowly, checking codes, nodding at passengers, adjusting a crooked tray here or a drooping curtain there. He doesn't speak, but he hums, a quiet tune you're beginning to recognize, something official sounding but oddly gentle. The Kenyan Railways theme song? You'll never know. As he passes, you hear the faint scratch of pen on form. One box checked, another initialed. He glances at your tray, gives the tiniest approving nod, then moves on. You exhale. You passed. Later, you find a soft cloth pouch behind your seat. Inside, a spare seat code card and a folded note. Someone's handwriting, shaky but neat. Try seat RA9 for sunrise. If the light hits just right. The tray glows. You smile. It's the kind of note you leave when you know you're not coming back, but still want someone to sit where you sat. See what you saw. Maybe next time. For now, you stretch. Take one more sip of warm tea, and tuck the card back into the pouch, carefully. The loop may curve, the track may rattle, but the system holds. Seat codes aligned, brake chart logged, all is as it should be. The train glides into the slow, familiar hum of mid-morning rhythm, the sound of a journey that has no interest in haste. Outside, the Kenyan landscape slips by in soft earth tones and distant murmurs of life. Cattle in profile. Distant eucalyptus. A line of laundry moving only slightly in the breeze. Inside, the air holds the steady scent of boiled sugar and aged vinyl. Warmed gently by sun-filtered glass. You lean back in your seat. Tray folded away now, and listen for the shift. It comes, right on schedule, a gentle chime from the car ahead, followed by the unmistakable creak of a tea urn being opened for second pour. This isn't a refill. This is tea break 2, the documented pause. The one marked on laminated charts and clipped beside thermos crates. You didn't make this up. A factual detail. The 1978 Kenyan Railways Mid-Journey Service Directive designated tea break 2 for all Loop C journeys lasting over 4.75 hours. The designated start time, 10:42 a.m. not 10:40. Not 10:45, 42, because, according to the directive, 42 minutes allows ample pre-steep readiness but avoids conflict with solar refraction across compartment glazing. You read that twice. You still don't understand, but it sounds very official. You peek toward the service cart as it rolls into view. New thermos, new cups, slightly less ceremonious now, no clink of spoon. No sugar packet dance, but still appreciated. You accept yours wordlessly. The server gives a single nod. A shared understanding that no one needs conversation this far into the ride. The tea this time? A little weaker, a little warmer, still comforting. You sip and glance down at your lap. There, folded once and tucked carefully, is the 1978 tea break chart, Type M cars. You found it earlier, between seat cushions, next to a lost cufflink and what may have once been a postage stamp. The chart is exquisite. Rows and rows of brake pairings, T-types matched to seating arrangements. To wall side versus aisle side dynamics. To average car temperature at different altitudes. There's even a color key. And a shaded section labeled Special Conditions, Wildlife Disruption, Diplomatic Travel, Unexpected Fog. You laugh softly. Unexpected fog. Who decides what fog is expected? A man across from you adjusts his sleeve and gestures vaguely toward your chart. That one's laminated wrong, he mutters, not unkindly. You hold it up. Sure enough, the column headers are reversed, east is west. Sugar is salt. Time is a lie. A misprint? A prank? Either way, you shrug. It still pours tea the same. A quirk worth noting. Certain batches of 1978 Type M charts were accidentally reversed in Nairobi's print house during a brief worker strike. Rather than reprint, a memo was issued suggesting passengers interpret with mirrored mindfulness. It became a minor cult thing. There are pins, stickers, a small fan group. They call themselves the Mirrored Breakers. You're tempted to join. You trace the grid with your fingertip. Stopping at a curious pairing, RA8 plus medium Assam plus, window level low. There's a tiny dot next to it. Not a typo, just a dot. No explanation. An unresolved note. The car hums gently. The track beneath like a metronome played by someone who once trained in rhythm but now mostly improvises. It's soothing. It also masks the creaks of old metal and the occasional rattle of something loose, possibly decorative. Possibly essential. You spot another passenger 2 rows ahead peeling open what looks like a chart wallet, an actual folio of documentation for tea breaks. Seat behavior. And window latching speeds. The latter is not a joke. You catch a glimpse of the title, Glide Rate Tolerances, Compartment E through H. It includes a note that sliding a window faster than 0.6 meters per second may disturb internal thermals and provoke passenger unrest. It's unclear if that's metaphorical. Your own window is closed, but you reach for the latch. Gently, just testing. A whisper of wind answers. Not disruptive, not provoking, just present. You look back at the chart and spot a faded note at the bottom. Refer to Annex D for incline-based deviation. You, of course, have no Annex D. That's okay. Someone once said the annexes are a test. Not to be followed, just acknowledge. Another cart rattles by, this one delivering biscuits. Not part of the break. Technically, just bonus. A small child reaches up from the row behind you, points at the biscuit tray, and says, with sleepy authority, that's the crunchy kind. You nod solemnly. Yes, the crunchy kind indeed. Crunchy and precise. You flip the chart over and discover something beautiful on the back, a faint pencil drawing of the car's interior. Mapped out seat by seat. Each circle represents a heat source, passenger, lamp, cup. It's labeled, Thermal Bloom Diagram, Trial B. The signature at the bottom? Just, Wanja. Wanja, whoever they were, had style. You follow the circles, tracking how your seat supposedly warms the space around it. It feels like magic, or physics, Or maybe the kind of truth you find in tea leaves and lost manuals. Across the aisle, someone's teacup teeters slightly with the sway of the train, then settles back into the tray indentation with a gentle tap. Like a heartbeat, like confirmation. Another sip. Still warm. Another glance at the mirrored chart. Still wrong. Still right. You're exactly where you're meant to be. The brake. The seat. The slope of light across your arm, it all aligns. Not by chance, but by decades of laminated wisdom and quiet rebellion. There's another chime, fainter this time, and the brake is over. But you don't move. You let the chart rest beside you. Soft from time, edges curled like a nap just taken. Somewhere in the next car. A window clicks shut. You breathe out slowly. You have everything you need. There's a lull now, the kind only mid-journey knows how to deliver. Not quite boredom, not quite serenity. You glance around the compartment and recognize the universal look of passengers who've collectively settled into the stretch. The sigh after the second tea. The slight slouch. The relaxed knee angle. Even the ceiling fan above seems to have synced itself to the rhythm of your mood. Spinning in a leisurely arc like it's not entirely sure where it needs to go next. This is when the conductors start doing the rounds. Not the ticket checks, they did that early. No, this part is about the seat logs. Yes, seat logs, not logs for seats. Logs about seats. A practice started officially in 1975 and finally standardized across Loop C in April 1978. And what were they documenting? The usual, angle of recline, cushion retention, frame vibration, but also, subjective comfort impressions, passenger fidget intervals, and, our favorite, cup security confidence. Each seat was its own tiny case study. You spot one of the junior conductors a few rows away. He's maybe 20, wearing the telltale gray cap with the orange stripe, not quite senior yet. In his hands, a clipboard with laminated overlays and a grease pencil tied with red thread. He leans slightly over a woman reading a well-worn Swahili paperback and jots something down. Then moves on. You prepare for your turn. When he stops beside you, he doesn't speak, just nods, scans the area around your seat, cup tray, window ledge, cushion indentation. He makes a note. One word. You don't ask, but you lean slightly to the side, casually, and catch a glimpse when he moves on. The word is feathered. You don't know what that means in this context. It could refer to your blanket, or the way your elbow rests, or perhaps the way your breath had briefly fogged the window in a lacy, avian shape. No way to know, but it's there now, on record. A factual detail. Seat logs were archived monthly, stored in manila envelopes tied with twine, then sent to a facility in Nakuru. Once a year, a summary was compiled, not by machine, but by a team known as the Form 9 compilers. These individuals trained in deciphering conductor handwriting, pencil pressure, and tone. The summary report was then presented at a semi-formal tea, naturally, where awards were given for most balanced cushion, least adjusted window, and, bizarrely, seat with strongest neutrality. You wonder if you're a contender. A quirk worth noting, some conductors, especially older ones, used small rubber stamps to mark unusual seat events. Tiny icons like umbrellas, teacups, or small birds would be pressed into margins to indicate things like unexpected spill, strong emotional energy, or passenger emits narrative tension. These stamps were never officially approved, but they were treasured. Some collectors even tried to steal logs just for the inked symbols. You heard someone once forged an entire journey's worth of bird stamps to make a train seem more dramatic. You believe it. There's a rustle beside you as your neighbor adjusts a scarf and pulls a small cloth booklet from their bag. You try not to stare. But of course, you do. It's a passenger seat interaction log. Self-issued, meaning, not official, but very real. This is someone who logs their own seat experience as they ride. They flip it open to today's entry, seat 14C, modest give. One creak on lean, tray stable, curtain friction mild. There's a sketch, a small one, of their legs, as viewed from above. 2 curved lines for thighs. 3 arrows to indicate temperature. A small question mark over the left ankle. Pending. No explanation given. You like these people. They're not tourists. They're archivists of their own inertia. The hum of the train deepens slightly, a response to elevation. Maybe, or just the tracks exhaling. Either way, it's calming. You look out again and realize the shadows have shifted. That means it's time for the window shade calibration check. You didn't invent that either. Once a day, usually between 11:30 a.m. and noon. A brief alignment check is encouraged, mostly unspoken, by those in the know. You see it happening, one by one. Shades are tugged, tapped, adjusted by a centimeter or two. The goal? To create consistent diagonal shade lines across the aisle-facing side. No one says why, but the goal is balance. You reach for yours, slide it down half an inch. That's it. Now it lines up with the crease in your trouser knee. Perfect. An unresolved note. No one agrees on what the lines are meant to evoke. Some say harmony, some say ventilation flow cues. One unofficial manual from 1976 simply states, "Lines lead where stories follow." That's all it said. No diagram, no context. Just that. You hear a quiet laugh from across the aisle. A man 2 seats over has just noticed your tiny adjustment and gives you a salute. Not sarcastic, respectful, as if you've passed a test without knowing you were being watched. You nod back. Elsewhere, someone's foot nudges a tray. Someone else coughs politely into a patterned handkerchief. The conductor stops beside them, notes something, then draws, yes, actually draws, a small leaf in the corner of their log sheet. A drawn leaf means something. Or maybe it just means the seat feels like it grew. You close your eyes for a second. Just long enough to register the sway of the cabin. Just long enough to wonder, what would your seat log say about you? Would it say, feathered, like before? Or would it now say, aligned, neutral, unfussed? You'll never know. But someone, somewhere, will read that log. Possibly a retiree with strong glasses and a love of mechanical ink pens. They'll read your name, or your seat number, and mark a check. Or a dash. Or a tiny cup with a smile. The train hums again. And you? You sit straighter. Just for a moment. Just enough to feel the cushion respond. Feathered. Still true. The dining car is 2 compartments ahead. But the tea cart comes to you. It always does. A little slower than you'd expect. And maybe rattlier than ideal, but that's the charm. You hear it before you see it, the unmistakable clink of porcelain tapping metal. The soft huff of steam from the thermos valves. The gentle jostle of teaspoons inside their shallow tray. And then it rounds the corner. The tea steward is not in uniform. Not exactly. He wears a pale lemon shirt. Loosely buttoned, with a cloth badge stitched above the pocket that simply reads, Musoni. No first name, no job title, but everyone knows him, because Musoni has memorized the chart. Yes, the chart. In 1978, the Kenya Railways Catering Division issued a rotating, preferred beverage service interval matrix, for all-day trains operating within the 200 km Nairobi-Mombasa corridor. It outlined not just when tea should be served, but when it would feel best. There's a difference. According to the matrix, you are now within what's called the second steep zone. It starts approximately 1 hour and 45 minutes after departure and is optimized for rehydration with mild tannins. Not too strong, not too weak, accompanied, if possible, by a biscuit of neutral temperament. Musoni's cart contains exactly 6 kinds of biscuit, all unlabeled. You're offered 2 at random. No negotiation. That's the ritual. The tea comes in ceramic mugs. Mismatched by age and pattern but equal in sturdiness. You accept one with faint blue vines curling around the rim. The glaze is chipped near the handle. But that makes it easier to grip. Procedural detail. Per service guidelines revised in July of '78. The tea must be poured from a height of no less than 8 inches, measured from spout to rim. The reasoning? Aeration and optical cheerfulness. Yes, spelled that way. The steward knows. He hits the target with a practiced arch. The splash is soft. The tea is just below scalding. You take your first sip. A joke floats up with the steam, British enough to burn. But Kenyan enough to soothe. You didn't make it up. It's part of the conductor humor package. Repeated on long rides to lighten the air. You smile anyway. Your biscuits? 1 sugar-topped. 1 salted. The balance is not accidental. A quirk worth noting, on older trains, especially those with retired carriages brought in from colonial service stock, the tea carts feature a locked compartment. No one opens it, not even Musoni. The key has been lost since at least 1969. Possibly longer. It's said to contain a forgotten tin of condensed milk and 2 silver teaspoons wrapped in muslin. Or maybe just spare wheels. Either way, locked. Musoni passes by again after a few minutes. This time holding a folded cloth that he presses briefly to the tea cart handle. A small gesture, but it keeps the metal cool. The cloth? Embroidered with the initials, KRBC, Kenya Railways Beverage Corps. An unofficial group. You smile. Of course that exists. You settle in again, now with tea in hand. The cabin smells gently of cardamom, linen, and metal warmth. Outside, the landscape is shifting, slowly, from dry brush to swaying savanna grass. A blur of yellows and muted greens. You spot the occasional herder far off in the distance. His figure still, goats like pebbles against the horizon. You glance down at your mug and notice something odd. A tiny number etched into the base. 42. No label, no brand, just that. Later, you'll find another mug with 23. Then 77. One steward says they're just cereals. Another says they correspond to lucky seat alignments. You ask Musoni. He just shrugs and says, "It's your number now." You nod. Fair enough. Across the aisle, someone asks for coffee instead. Musoni hesitates. The chart doesn't cover coffee during the second steep zone. But he obliges, begrudgingly, and serves it from a different pot entirely. Smaller and darker. The mug is plain. No etching. The air shifts slightly, as though the ritual had been paused and resumed. You sip your tea again. In solidarity. An unresolved note. The official catering manual includes a brief, one-line warning on page 17, avoid prolonged contact between biscuits and window light. That's it. No further comment. You tilt your biscuit slightly toward the curtain to see what might happen. Nothing. Yet. But you eat it quickly. Just in case. The aisle creaks as the cart rolls further down. One steward leaves a thermos at the far end of the carriage. Marked, staff. But passengers use it anyway. No one stops them. That's the unspoken détente of mid-route refreshments. You pour yourself a second half cup later and feel slightly daring. You watch as an elderly woman pulls a small spoon from her own purse, wrapped in tissue. Burnished from use, and stirs her tea with the kind of precision you'd expect from a retired seamstress. She hums a little, not a tune, just a rhythm, like counting stitches. And now, everyone is drinking. No phones, no distractions, just the collective warmth of 42 ceramic mugs and whatever lives in between sips. You lean your head back. The breeze through the cracked window is cool and smells like dry clay. Your seat cushion has fully adapted to your shape. You feel like you belong here, at least until the chart resets again. Which it will, just after 2 p.m., during mild palate reinvigoration hour. But for now, you drink, you watch, and you note, quietly. Perhaps, that seat 14C has the best biscuit to balance ratio on the whole train. Just saying. Somewhere past the bend near Sultan Hamid, the train shifts tempo, not speed, tempo. The rhythm of its movement changes, settling into something more confident. You feel it in your spine before you see it in the scenery. And as the wheels hum louder, you find yourself noticing things that earlier escaped your attention. Like the seat numbers, not the visible ones, no. Those are clear enough. Small metal plates, riveted just above shoulder height on each seat back. Stamped with basic black digits, 9A, 10B, 11C, but beneath those, sometimes on the wooden frame or the upholstery seam, are handwritten notations, red pencil, faded ink, occasionally just a scratched groove shaped like a sideways H. They aren't random. The Seat Code Registry of 1978, issued by the Kenya Railways Passenger Affairs Bureau, outlines the dual-layered system of allocation, visible designation and internal positioning. Each seat had 2 identities, one for passengers, one for maintenance staff. The second identity, or shadow code, tracked wear patterns, spring fatigue, and T-spill frequency. Your seat, for example, is 12B to you, but internally, It's logged as Kilo Delta Red. That's a code level reserved for mid-row. Right hand, single window units with moderate hinge stress. It means the seat's recline function is known to be slightly sticky when humid. Not broken, just opinionated. You lean back. It resists for half a second before yielding. Exactly as predicted. A procedural detail tucked deep in the 1978 registry. Every 10.000 kilometers of use. Each shadow-coated seat must undergo a re-cushioning readiness exam. The test involves a small pendulum weight, 3 felt pads, and a surprisingly poetic phrase, "Observe the wobble with grace." No one knows who wrote that part. But it's in the manual. Page 42. Across the aisle, a child hops onto her father's lap and bounces gently. Their seat creaks in a melodic way, 2 tones. Slightly out of sync. You can't help but smile. That's a Bravo Green 14 unit. Known for asymmetric harmonics under minor load. You remember that from earlier. Or maybe you just invented it. Either way, it tracks. A quirk worth noting, some older seat pairs have mismatched codes. Not a mistake, deliberate. Engineers would occasionally test compatibility by placing a newer cushioning unit beside an older frame. If the resulting pair passed a vibration symmetry threshold, they'd stay that way. Otherwise, one would be reallocated to a freight coach for secondary seating. You love the idea of 2 old parts learning to get along. You run your hand along the window ledge. There's a ridge, a slight bump in the wood grain just below the midpoint. That's not random either. That's the seating division mark. Technically, everything in front of the ridge belongs to the companion field. Everything behind it, to the personal quadrant. The rule? No teacups should cross the border. It's not enforced, of course. But it's there. Someone places their thermos too close. You glance. Just briefly. They adjust it. Harmony restored. Back in the day, during certain test runs between Nakuru and Eldoret, inspectors would measure how often passengers respected these divisions. The data was inconclusive, but one thing stood out: the more neatly dressed the passenger, the more likely they were to overstep boundaries. There was even a chart, correlation of collar starchiness to cup drift. Another unresolved note: one page in the seat code registry is entirely blank except for a heading, Special Conditions for Carriage M. There's no carriage M on any known schedule. No diagram, no archival mention, and yet the page remains. Waiting, perhaps, for something no longer listed. You glance down at your shoes and notice the pattern in the flooring. It's linoleum, but not uniform. A marbled design in dusty greens and browns that subtly shifts near each row of seats. Maintenance staff used the darker patches as reference points for bolt alignment. You realize that the green swirl under your heel is probably the one mentioned in the 1978 repair notes as cleft bloom, upper midrow junction. The train slows slightly, not for a stop, just a curve. You hear the hiss of pressure valves adjusting. The breeze returns, this time with the faintest scent of burnt sugar. Somewhere, someone is toasting peanuts in a paper cone. And then you notice something new, a folded card tucked into the seat pocket in front of you. Not a schedule, not a safety card, just a slim chart, hand-typed on cream stock. At the top, it reads, Seat Codes, Personality Alignments, Unofficial. Below it, 3 columns, A Seats, Observers, Dreamers, Tea Sippers, B Seats, Planners, Note-Takers, Biscuit Balancers, C Seats, Wanderers, Fidgeters, Window Leaners. You're in a B. You nod. Sounds about right. At the bottom, a handwritten note in blue ink: if you switch seats mid-ride, do so with kindness. The card has no issuer, no logo, just a gentle reminder that sometimes manuals aren't official. And not all charts come from headquarters. You sit back again, the curve of the track straightening as the sun shifts to your left side. The metal frame under your arm squeaks a little, but settles quickly, another whisper from the seat that's seen more miles than you have. In the seat behind you, someone hums quietly. It's not the tune from earlier, but it has the same rhythm. The car sways. The hum stays steady. You exhale. The system works. The seat codes start to fade from your mind, not because they've become less interesting, but because something else now pulls your attention: the T. To be clear, Tea aboard the Kenyan Railway in 1978 wasn't served the way you'd expect on, say, a fancy European line with porcelain cups and delicate saucers. No, this tea had routine, rhythm, and a whole supporting document to match. The refreshment distribution and steeping interval chart, last updated in March 1978, outlines a staggered delivery pattern based on time, carriage type, and ambient temperature. Each train attendant, sometimes called a steeper in old internal memos, was expected to cross-check brewing intervals with a fold-out chart carried in a jacket pocket. It was waterproof, always slightly sticky, and every tea round was paired with a break chart. Not a schedule, a chart. The tea break cohesion diagram, to be precise. In theory, it matched each seat code cluster, remember those, to an optimal tea interval. Group A seats, morning dreamers, preferred tea at 10:07. Group B, 10:22, and Group C, they'd skip the first round entirely, only showing interest after the second pour, ideally when the sun was past the midpoint of the window latch. It sounds fussy. It was, and yet, it worked. You spot the tea trolley now, low, boxy, with peeling blue paint and a wheel that always squeaks when turning left. The man pushing it wears a beige cap with a fraying patch. The initials, KR, barely legible. In his hand, a pair of laminated order sheets clipped to a pencil. He stops at row 13, consults the sheet, then pours with one smooth motion. Left hand, tin teapot, slight swirl, sugar first. He pauses, waits. Row 13 declines. He nods and moves on. No questions asked. That's the rule. If a row collectively declines, they're skipped until the next designated interval. No re-asks. No pity pours. It's in the manual, under the heading, Beverage Autonomy Clause. An early gesture toward passenger rights before such things had names. You accept your tea at row 12. The paper cup has a faint taste of cardboard and nostalgia. You sip carefully. It's sweet, a little oversteeped, and completely perfect. A procedural detail tucked near the end of the tea section in the operations binder. Once every 20 journeys, the tea staff must rotate the sugar scoop counterclockwise in its container to prevent crystalline bias and handle fatigue. You laugh softly. Sounds made up, but you don't question it. Next to you, a passenger flips open an old booklet, something in Kiswahili with brittle pages and a cloth spine. You catch a glimpse of a diagram, a chart of tea temperatures at altitude. Each line traces a different route, Nairobi to Kisumu, Mombasa to Eldoret. Tiny notations mark where to expect faster cooling due to tunnel drafts or bridge crossings. You glance at the window. The glass is slightly fogged from inside, but you can still make out the silhouette of distant hills. The sun has shifted again, westward now, and you feel the entire coach adjust. Not physically, but energetically. Tea has been served. Break has been taken. Everyone is subtly realigned. One seat up. Someone is reading an old newsletter, Kenya Railways Weekly. April, 78. You see the headline, New Uniform Epaulette Colors Finalized. Beneath it, a smaller note, refreshment staff permitted to use lavender napkins on Sundays. You didn't know that. You think back to your own tea experience. The napkin you got wasn't lavender. It was plain white, a little damp, but that's okay. It felt right. Some things work better without flourish. The tea trolley rattles toward the back. The attendant doesn't look tired. Just practiced. Each pour a small ceremony. Repeated so often it's become meditative. You wonder how many cups he's served since his first day. Tens of thousands. Probably. And how many charts he's memorized. You suspect. All of them. You lean your head against the seat. The smell of steeped leaves lingers in the air, black tea. Sharp sugar. And maybe a hint of clove. Some older carriages used to scent their water tanks with crushed cardamom pods. Added weekly during filter cleanings. A tradition phased out sometime in 79, but never officially removed from the manual. One page simply states, tank refresh, cardamom optional. Subject to seasonal availability. A phrase both official and non-committal. Classic railway language. Then there's the forgotten quirk, the tiny embossed T on certain carriage door frames. Supposedly, if you stood beneath it while drinking tea, the steam would always rise straight up, never sideways. A superstition? Maybe, but several retired staff swore by it. You make a note to check the next doorway. As the coach hums along, you spot a man refilling his thermos with the last of his cup. He pours back slowly, swirling as he goes, perhaps following an unspoken ritual passed down from an older sibling or a tea steward from his childhood. The liquid sloshes gently. It makes a soft sound you can only describe as content. Another unresolved oddity, some break charts included notes for silent service sessions. These were intervals when the staff would serve tea without speaking, not out of mood. But policy. It happened once per route. Usually just after the second tunnel. The theory was that silence helped steep thoughtfulness. Whether passengers noticed or not wasn't the point. The system required it, so it happened. You close your eyes for a second. The warmth of the cup. The rhythm of the tracks. The knowledge that somewhere, a laminated chart with your seat's brake profile exists, probably still in a drawer beneath the dispatch desk in Nairobi. Filed under passenger flow, morning southbound. And as the train continues to hum, the thought drifts through your mind. There's something deeply comforting about knowing when your tea will come, even if you didn't ask for it. You feel the last sip of tea settle into you, warm. Slightly gritty at the bottom, and let your fingers curl loosely around the empty cup. There's a soft thunk as the train shifts slightly on its track. A reminder that time, like the trolley, is still moving. By now, you're familiar with the rhythm of the seat codes and tea breaks. But there's one last manual most people never see. It's tucked away in the back of the Nairobi Central Dispatch Archive. In a metal drawer labeled Seating Refreshment Synchronization Log, Class B Trials, it's not technically classified, just forgotten. Inside, you'd find 36 pages of hand-drawn overlays. Each one maps out not the seats or the tea rounds, but the patterns in which passengers adjusted themselves during long journeys. A stretch here, a lean there, and whether these micro-movements correlated with steeping time or ambient coach pressure. It's absurd, and yet, you kind of love it. In one chart, someone annotated a change in foot position in seat 5D over a 2-hour window and proposed a theory that long-distance posture may influence sugar preference. A footnote reads, "This may explain the 717 sweetened exception on Sundays." It was signed, simply, G. Mwangi, Probationary Cartographer, Refreshment Division. You smile, because of course the Refreshment Division had its own cartographer. And that brings you to one final procedural quirk, the spoon return compartment. Every tea set, even the disposable ones, included a thin silvered spoon. Not quite real silver, but close enough to suggest value. At the end of each carriage, near the second door, was a narrow vertical slot, sometimes marked with a red dot. Sometimes left plain. Into this, passengers were expected to return their spoon. No consequences if you didn't. But there was a quiet culture of compliance. People returned them, silently, with a soft clink. Some say that's how the staff knew the ride was going well, when the spoon bin filled evenly by the end of the segment. You pass the bin now. It's half full. You drop yours in and hear the tiniest echo. A bell of gratitude. Ahead, a man in a forest green coat is scribbling in a small notebook. He's not a conductor, not staff, just someone documenting something, possibly the spoon bin's contents. You wonder if he'll ever publish it. The seat code above you flickers slightly, just the painted number. A scratch catches the light, and you notice an old overlay. Faded but there. The M designator for midday recline friendly. It was a short-lived classification from 1977, used briefly during a passenger comfort initiative. The program ended when too many people reclined at once, causing synchronized neck strain. It's not in the current manual, but you like knowing it existed. You lean back now, just slightly, and think about the charts, how someone sat down, probably late at night, and decided that exactly 47 minutes after the train left voice station was the right time for a second pour. Or that people sitting in column E were 13% more likely to prefer lemon biscuits with tea. And that maybe, just maybe, a well-timed biscuit avoided one argument per day. There's a page in the old orientation packet that reads, "Hospitality begins with forecasted kindness." It's corny, but it works. And there's still one mystery unresolved. Occasionally, only on outbound evening routes, some passengers reported hearing a faint ding just before the third tea round. No one could trace the source. The manual never mentions it. Some said it came from the roof. Others thought it was embedded in the wheel axles, triggered by a certain curve. And one theory, scribbled anonymously in the margin of a route log, says, "The train hums when it knows you need something warm." You smile again, because maybe it does. And now, the wind down begins. The train hums softer now, like it knows your thoughts are growing slower. You feel the gentle sway of the carriage, the way it nudges sleep forward. Second by second, shadows stretch across the seat in front of you, bending at angles only trains and sunset can make. Outside, the Kenyan landscape slips by, acacia trees in silhouette, low hills dusted with gold, the sky turning honey at the edges. It doesn't ask for your attention. It just keeps existing, steadily, faithfully. The last few spoons clink into the return slot. A napkin flutters under someone's foot. A steward straightens a kettle for no reason except habit. And somewhere, in the dispatch office, probably under a wobbling desk fan, a forgotten drawer slides shut on a collection of charts that once guided someone's day. Quietly, thoroughly, lovingly, you let your eyes close now. There's no final instruction, just a gentle suggestion, and the whisper of a manual that always knew when you'd drift off.